My name is Chris, and I'm a grateful recovered drug addict. Hey. So I get the distinct honor and privilege of introducing our Commander-in-Chief, Eric Spofford, CEO and founder of Granite Recovery Centers. It's been a hell of a ride, man. Eric has touched all of our lives in a very significant way. Without him, essentially, there would be no this and us, right? Eric has probably more energy and drive than all of us combined. And to call Eric a hard worker would be a gross understatement. Fortunately for all of us, his passion and life mission is centered around helping others and offering them a solution to their problem. His involvement in this organization is far-reaching, and our treatment model, our 12-step centered approach, is because of him. On behalf of the employees and staff and everybody whose lives you have affected, we got you a little something. Maybe you can find a spot for those in your office. Can't wait to hear your story. I'd like to introduce my friend, mentor, and leader, Eric Spofford.
Hello? I guess it works. There's a long time in my life I really despised anyone that wore a wire. My name's Eric Spofford. I'm a drug addict. Chris and Persephone and everyone else involved in this, I'm honored and I'm humbled. What a beautiful gift, you know? Persephone all morning has been looking at me, making me nervous, knowing that I have to speak up here, and just keeps looking at me going, I killed the game. So, okay. First, I gotta be honest, Commander-in-Chief, CEO, big words. I still don't know what that means. I'm so honored to be a part of this thing, but I really believe that's just my role. I'm a part, you know. We have over 200 team members here, and I'm so grateful for every one of them, and they show up and suit up and show up and work hard with passion and dedication every day. And it's probable that I get too much credit because there's a lot of people in the shadows that aren't as frontline and public as I am. And so let's give it up for everybody involved, because they're, you know, I consistently say, and I'll say it again today, that I'm far more concerned with living the rest of my life and having it mean something and making a decent contribution to this organization, to addicted people, and to, you know, the world around me than I am being comfortable or what's in it for me. And I think that's really indicative of the spirit of Don Pritz. And, you know, you talk about legacy. We named this recovery center after him. I've known his name since 2004. I've been sober since 2006. And he has had a profound impact on my recovery, my life, my beliefs, my relationship, the truth, and honestly, me getting better. And I never met the man. That's the type of thing that I want to keep on going on with the work that's done here. You know, that's a legacy that'll live on forever. You know, to tell my story, I grew up right here in this town. In Salem, I sniffed my first OxyContin off the back of a Slim Shady CD case in 1999. You know? And it wasn't much longer than that I found heroin. I believe I was about 15 years old. And the first time I ever tried to get clean, I was 17. And 17 is a really young age to try and get sober and find recovery. But at that point, I was running with the hardest, and I was a stone cold heroin addict. And I've been that way for some time, and I was in a lot of pain. And I remember the first time I asked for help. My dad owned a very small tree and excavation company, and owner-operator. I was running the chainsaw. He was in a small excavator working in someone's backyard. And I remember jumping up on the track of the machine, dope sick, about 11 a.m. on a hot summer morning in July, and looking at my poor dad, who was at that time raising me alone, and saying, "Dad, I need some help. I'm a heroin addict." And I would love to say that it was as easy as he knew where to go, and when we got to where he knew where to go, I was provided truth and real recovery and what I needed to get better, but that's not what happened. You know, back then, the internet wasn't as big of a thing. We had, you know, a phone book, so we got to the yellow pages, and through calling around, I ended up one of the very first people, the first runs of people in New Hampshire anyway, that was prescribed what's now Suboxone. You know, I was prescribed that stuff before it even had a brand name. It was just buprenorphine. And at 17 years old, it was sold to me like it was a miracle drug, and I was going to take it for a couple weeks, and, you know, everything would be fine. And so I took it for a couple weeks. They gave me a Valium punch-out, so I stayed up till like 4 in the morning in project mode. I built bird feeders and clothes racks and cleaned my house front to back and back again. And you know, when I ran out of the stuff and they said I was going to be all right, I got violently ill, and I was still detoxing. And the next year, at 18 years old, I ended up on the methadone clinic, and I did a year and a half on the methadone clinic while I shot coke and smoked crack and ate benzos and drank booze and weed, and you know, and my life was just miserable. And I got arrested for the umpteenth time for driving without a license, and I went to jail for a little bit, and I came off the methadone clinic and I went on a dope run, and in a couple months I overdosed 4 times. And this is back when overdosing wasn't as prevalent as it is now. You really didn't overdose just off of heroin. It was real heroin. You had to be eating a lot of benzos, which I was doing. And after the 4th time, I ended up back in detox, and a counselor who I was just with a couple weeks ago, Mark Ribello, forever grateful for that guy, told me that I was going to this place, and I didn't have a choice in it. And he handed me a phone, and on the other end of it was Piers. And that was 2004, and I was 19 years old. And when I got to the place that I was going, that Piers was at, I was 100 pounds lighter than I am. I had track marks from my hands up to my shoulders, and I thought I was a certified badass killer. I thought I was so tough that the other people in the treatment place nicknamed me Bulletproof off of 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying album. And I was also so delusional that I thought it was a compliment. And I didn't get sober when I got here. You know, I met Piers, and I had an experience similar to how he talks about Dawn, and he presented truth. And, you know, after being in detoxes and jail and psychiatrists and medication and therapists and all the spots that guys like me and people like you get to, trying to get better, I saw a guy that could effectively actually tell me out of the big book in his own experience what was really wrong with me, and that heroin and other drugs weren't my problem, sobriety was, and that it was just addiction, but this is what it meant. And I had an experience, and then I went out and used for another 2.5 years. And I stayed sober at that time about 6 months. I made amends. I had a couple little sponsees, but I wasn't fully surrendered to what it is that we do here. And I didn't live every piece of this program, and I didn't let God into every part of my life. And, you know, one thing that is consistently true is that you can do whatever you want as long as you're willing to pay the price. You don't want to finish your amends? You don't have to, but you do have to be willing to pay the price. And I found that out the hard way. And so in 2006, December 2006, my last run lasted about 6 months, and it was a kamikaze mission, and I thought I was never coming back because I'd been trying what I thought was trying so hard, and I was just defeated, and I thought I was going to end that run by dying or going to prison, both of which almost happened. And I got sober, and I didn't have the luxury of going to treatment this time. I didn't have the luxury of a loving, recovered community of folks like you either. I got sober kicking a mean habit on a couch in Nashua I was if you're familiar with the area, I was in the Tree Streets. And if you're not familiar with the area, the Tree Streets rivals, some of the nicest places in Lawrence. I had prostitutes and, my neighbors were crackheads and heroin addicts. And, God is funny. He, for whatever reason, and I still can't figure it out and don't know if I ever will, that God's grace showed up. And I was able to stay sober long enough to get some traction in recovery. And I linked back up with Piers, and I went through the steps, and I read this quickly. I wrote my inventory, sleeping in a studio apartment in the winter, that I didn't have money to buy furniture. My living arrangements was a pile of blankets that I was really grateful for, and a busted couch. I don't know if you've ever been in too many trap houses where the couch is so old that the wood or whatever it is underneath the cushions breaks, and you sit on it and you kind of sink down to the floor. And when I was moving into that little apartment, the landlord was like, "Hey, I'm sorry about that. I'll get that couch out of here for you." "No, man, I'll take care of it. Don't worry." And so the couch wasn't all that comfortable either. I opted over the blankets, over the couch. And I wrote this inventory, and I went through the rest of this work. I spent the next couple years making amends, and I had such a powerful experience. I agree with Piers that a lot of folks that come through here and elsewhere underestimate the power in the 12 steps. And the power in the 12 steps caught up to me at that time, and I caught what, Don would say, that if you haven't caught fire by the time you're at your 7th step, it's not working. And by the time I was at my 7th step, I was absolutely on fire. I had been changed from the inside out. I was the last person to really realize that. And I got busy. One thing that's been true about my recovery that I hope for all of yours is that this thing from down deep of just wanting to help people and wanting to see other people get better gets in you. And it's something for me that's not superficial. It's not something I could wish myself into, and quite frankly, it's not something I could wish myself out of. This is not easy. This has been an amazing decade of doing this, but it's been incredibly hard. I've seen amazing success. Looking around this room, we get, a few hundred people, or maybe closer to 300 in here, of, folks that are in recovery, that each and every one have just miraculous stories of people that are not supposed to be sitting in this room sober today. That's not supposed to happen. But yet there you are. I remember when our clinical director, Russell Beebe, showed up as a client, probably 9 years ago, whatever it was. 10 years ago, there it is, and so many since then, and that part of it has just been part of probably the deepest and most enriched part of my life, to see people get better and to be able to bear witness to what God will do with them if they let them. But on the other hand, I've seen, this is the trenches, baby. This is the absolute trenches. I've lost so many people that I love, it's not even funny. I've loved on, so many people only to watch them not get this thing and lose their lives to addiction, that I think that piece of it has changed me as well over the years. I'll give example of that, and how real and how current. This isn't like something I'm talking about that happened last year or last month or 5 years ago. There was a girl that I went to high school with. She was a year younger than me. I didn't know her all that well. I knew her better later on in life. And she passed away probably a little more than a year ago of an overdose. And as I was getting ready this morning and, doing my normal routine of checking email and the news and Facebook and probably 15 other digital platforms, I see on Facebook that her brother died. Yesterday. I mean, you have opioid addiction that are wiping out entire family lines. That's how serious this is. So I get busy back then, and I very similar to Piers, in 2006, 7, 8, There's no one really to speak of that I can find in New Hampshire that's working the steps out of the big book. And, you know, all the people in AA I've created enemies with because I've caught fire with this thing. We talk about something called the terrible twos, and I was certainly a victim to that. I had a hardcover big book that when you closed it across the pages in permanent marker in large capitalized letters, I had bullshit filter. And I would roll into AA meetings and I would slam that baby down on the table and I would light the room up and with my share, and I would take on any argument for anyone that wanted to step up because I was a recovered drug addict and a recovered alcoholic. And you know, it did not resonate with people that had been around for a while that were stuck in their ways. If you do similar and with similar groups of people, you probably will not make friends with them. I can promise you that. But it did resonate with newcomers, with people that just got here. That, you know, when you came in like I did, shaken from the booze, from the withdrawals, or dope sick, and, you know, we started talking about the phenomenon of craving and, you know, restless, irritable, discontented, and the mental obsession, it grabbed their attention because it's real. And it is very much in line with the lived experience of any real alcoholic or drug addict. And so I started to create the fellowship that I crave, as the big book talks about. And I had, you know, 15, 20 sponsees, and I tried to get them through the steps quickly so they could start sponsoring other people. And it became overwhelming, and I couldn't keep up. So what we did, Piers would come down and help every once in a while, along with some other people from different areas, but we created 12-step workshops. We're very similar to the treatment modality that we have at Granite Recovery Centers. We started taking people through the steps in groups. And what spun out of that was this idea that I wanted to start a sober living because guys were coming out of these facilities that we were sponsoring them in and had nowhere to go. There wasn't a single sober house in the whole state. And so 10 years ago, October 2008, I moved out of my little apartment that I eventually got a bed and a real couch for, and in Nashua in the Tree Streets, and I moved into a modest 3-family home, and we set it up so that it had 11 beds, and I lived there for the next 18 months. And living with sober living guys at that time was, I look back on it and they're some of my fondest memories. We went to meetings together, we went on commitments together, we cooked food on the grill together, you know, we talked, we bonded. I still have so many incredibly deep relationships from guys that were there, but I would never do it again. I enjoy it that I don't have guys crazy, newly sober, banging on my bedroom window at midnight anymore. And, you know, what started in that sober living, quickly, you know, I got motivated and energized to grow that. And over the next couple of years, it went from an 11-bed sober living to the Granite House that sits now, which is a 63-bed, I think, extended care sober living program, highly structured. We brought on a staff, and we really just wanted to help create a program for men to come and be able to have a real experience in recovery. When I got sober, you know, around the time which I got sober, I would use big language, and I would say, I've always been a little big for my britches, if that makes sense. So, you know, almost 12 years ago, I talked about, you know, I'm gonna get recovery, and I'm gonna stay sober, and I'm gonna help a lot of people. And the people around me looked at me and went, yeah, all right, buddy. And 10 years ago, I said, I'm gonna start a sober living house for men. And mind you, I was 23 years old and I lived in the projects, to put that into context. And they looked at me and went, all right, pal. And 5 years ago, when, you know, we really got the idea that we want to grow this into a full continuum of care and a large treatment organization, from detox to treatment to sober living, and have it be large scale, I got the same response. Yeah, okay, buddy. And, you know, where this thing has moved, and I'm not going to bore you with the details of what it took for me and a team of people to build Granite Recovery Centers to what it is now, but that's not the end game. And where things have shifted more recently is in line with the stuff with dislocation theory that Piers talked about, and the ever-growing opioid epidemic, and people dying in just this thing that's become the tsunami. And this really means that Granite Recovery Centers becomes a platform in which we help produce recovered drug addicts and energize you people to go out there and change the world. And I know that sounds like a big order, and there's probably a fair amount of people that are going, yeah, okay, buddy. But I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. And, I'll talk about that a little bit. I think what's important to recognize is that I've had significant experience involved outside of church basements and 12-step fellowships, from being involved in politics in Concord to down to the federal level in Washington, D.C. Several years ago, I spoke to the United States Senate on the opioid epidemic. And it speaks in true to how people with lived experience rarely get a seat at the table. And about halfway through my talk, I watched their expressions, and I realized I think that they thought they made a mistake having me there. I sat on a panel with two other people in a room in Washington, D.C., in one of their big legislative buildings. And I was surrounded by this half a horseshoe, or I guess a full horseshoe, which would be half a circle or an oval, whatever, surrounded by big-name senators, the ones you see on, CNBC and Fox News and C-SPAN. And, it was a pretty surreal experience. And I was invited down there by Senator Ayotte of New Hampshire, and with me was a pharmacist and a doctor. And we gave our individual testimony that we had to write, and it had to get approved. We had to submit it, and then the format of it was several hours long, and they opened it up for question and answer with all the senators. And I think, not that it's their fault, they're senators, they're politicians, they just is what they is, right? But I think it was really indicative of where this thing's going if the recovery community doesn't get energized and incorporate that activism piece into their 12th step. That, the landscape of what happens with addiction, policy, and everything related to it is in the hands of a lot of people, and none of them are us. How's that make you feel? And so I sat there and listened through testimony of the pharmacist and the doctor from Maryland, and they both sat there and basically, told the senators and reaffirmed the senators on information that apparently they'd already been given, which is the only way that you can recover from opioid addiction is through Suboxone maintenance. When the doctor was asked how long someone is on Suboxone maintenance, she said, well, we don't ask a diabetic how long they're going to be on their insulin. I don't know why we would ask a opioid addict how long they would be on Suboxone. It's for life. I about lost my shit, I was like, oh, man. And, they haven't invited me back since. I'm not all that surprised. But, I said, that's not true. I am one of many that's here as a representative of the recovery community. I am a heroin addict, and I haven't shot dope or taken Suboxone or drink or anything stronger than an Advil in a very long time. And that's possible. It's not only possible, it's real. It's not only real, but they're numerically significant. There are millions of people in recovery that are being ignored as policy is being written and changes are being made to try and acclimate to this opioid epidemic. And so, I think I know the work that happens here at Granite Recovery Centers and what's been built by a really special team of people is an amazing program. It's much different than really any other place. There's not anywhere else that I know of personally that people have access to that you can go and have an experience such as that you would have here. And the result of that is, what has been my dream becoming fulfilled is that people are getting better at scale. That hundreds of people every month are coming through here and hearing a message of recovery and truth, and then being given the option of, do you want to do this or not? Does this resonate with you or not? Do you want to get better? If so, we will show you how. But my dream and my vision does not end there. It's not about this. It is. This is necessary. It's the building blocks for the next thing. And I think we've been so busy getting to where we are now that it's important that we start to give language to what is the next thing. I will say this, and I hope it empowers you, and I hope you take it with you when you leave, that nobody is more qualified to help addicts besides recovered addicts. Can we give it up? And that's the work we all should be doing. This isn't, I'm getting old. And 10 years, I was like, I can't believe it. This feels like it was yesterday that we started this, and it feels like I've been doing this for a lifetime. And how the fuck am I old enough to have been doing this for a decade? And it's kind of the mixed bag of emotions that I've had over the last couple days. But, this isn't, what I see is it tends to be written on the coattails of Piers, of Russell, of Jeff, of Chris, of John Duford, of myself, of the guys that have been doing this a long time. And we'll continue to do what we do, but in order to make this a movement, in order to, if you want to call it Granite Recovery Movement, or you just want to call it Recovery Movement, I don't give a shit. But just make it a movement. Because the only place I've ever seen people actually get better is at the hands of recovered drug addicts. The only place I've ever seen someone come in and recover to a point where they get a quality of life that looks attractive to me is doing this. This is a dangerous time, and if this truth and this all resonates with you, you need to be vocal about it. You need to get out there and step outside and have your lived experience be loud and proud. It is, the enemy in my mind, in the early days were those crusty old timers that would tell me just don't drink no matter what. And I'd be like, fuck you, and I'm recovered. And, and now that has changed. Now we have community. Look around. You guys don't have to bear the axe that some of us guys that have been around for a long time had to do. You have each other. You have an alumni network. You have an amazing, enormous community of people that speak the same language as you and do the same stuff. But now it's mission critical on another thing. I never thought I'd see a day where policymakers and some of the so-called recovery advocates think that it's okay or legitimate to use drugs and still be in recovery. Fuck you. It's crazy. There was a New York Times article about a month ago, and tell me how this makes you feel. Well, not all at the same time, but later. That took a stab at abstinence. It said, don't risk your life on abstinence. And then it outlined about 15 or 20 stories of people that said, I was once addicted to Oxycontin, and now all I do is smoke weed and drink, and I'm in recovery. Does anyone in here think they can just smoke weed and drink if you were a heroin addict? No. So they're so dislocated from the truth around this thing. The thing is, there's two different types of people that use drugs. People that have drug abuse and drug addicts. If I'm just abusing drugs, yeah, I can go touch opiates and put them down. And then I can go smoke weed, and I have choice and power and control over those things. And so the climate out there is dangerous. And you have all these other sectors, from medication-assisted treatment to, harm reduction, to all pathways, to even crazier stuff that I haven't even begun to understand, making a lot of noise. And my criticism for the recovered community is that we're not keeping up and that we're not loud enough. And that has to come from the voices of hundreds and then thousands. And that only happens by the work that, not that we do, that the work that you guys are all about to go out and do. And I hope that makes sense to you. And I think that, I talk a lot, if you've been in any groups that I run, about the micro and the macro and the difference. Getting out in the rallies and telling your stories and being loud with your voice is the macro. It's the big picture. The micro is that when you get out of Granite Recovery Centers, you go into those meetings that people like us aren't in, that people that are recovered aren't there, that you're in the jail carrying a commitment, that you're down at the homeless shelter carrying a message, that you're in the detox grabbing folks. You see what I'm saying? We must grow numerically for the macro, for the movement, and because lives are on the line. This has never been more real and never has more been at risk than what is currently. You know, when I got sober, I shot real heroin. When you said fentanyl when I got sober, I thought you meant a patch or a lollipop. And if you relapsed, which I saw a fair amount of, people went out there and typically, you know, we would say, oh, they're going to die, they can die, or you know, but typically that didn't happen. It wasn't all that frequent. They burnt their lives to the ground and probably and hopefully made it back. And now people are going out there and they're dropping like flies and they're dying. My generation and younger generations are being wiped out. Family lines are being wiped out. And everything that we've trusted them to do, everything they've deployed has been either ineffective or made it worse. What are you going to do about it? It's time that we take responsibility and activate and care about our own people, because it seems like we're the only folks that are actually qualified to do so. This is Real People, Real Recovery from the Streets of Solution with Eric Spofford
and Jeff Hatch.
This is a podcast where we're going to talk about real recovery issues that affect real people.
Here we are back again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the number one podcast in the universe, Real People, Real Recovery from the Streets of the Solution with your hosts, Jeff Hatch and...
What's up, guys? Eric Spofford.
Bing, bang, boom.
Bing, bang, boom. Oh, man. Welcome back. Quick announcement. We're going to move to doing this show once a week. I tell you, since we started, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I like to consume that stuff. And the appreciation level for the effort that it takes people to put this stuff together, others that I enjoy, has gone through the roof. Right. Because keeping up with it and being consistent, man, it's and full-time job and, you know.
Yeah.
And all that. It's a lot. It's a lot of effort, you know. Hope everybody's had a good week. What do we talk about, Jeff? I think we're going to talk about perspective a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Coming through the journey we went through the past 3 episodes with your path and experience, I think it's good to move in today to a little current topic and talk a little bit about perspective and what comes to us and how we move through life. So, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, man. I think perspective is such an important topic because our experience in the world really depends on the glasses in which we look at it through, like entirely. You know, some people have like great lives, what others would consider a great life, but they're so negative that every day it's complaining and whining and looking at it through, you know, the lens of like what's wrong in the world and what's wrong with this and, you know, meh, meh, meh.
I can't handle that anymore, man.
No.
It's just not okay. Because the truth of the matter is like not only for our own selves, but people that we surround ourselves with have a huge impact on us. Whether we want to admit that or not, our environment helps to dictate our perspective. And when you got somebody like that crawling in your ear saying that crap all the time, man, ooh, it's hard not to get a little about it, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, that whole thing about look at the 5 closest people to you.
Boom.
That's true.
Oh, 100%.
Like, there's an immense amount of value in that.
No question.
Like, audit your circle.
No question.
You know? And then, you know, you have a wide range of people and their perspectives. And I think a lot of it has to do with how, excuse me, our level of awareness and how awake are we? Like,
yes.
Are you awake to life? Are you paying attention? Or are you sleepwalking, dreaming that you're awake?
Ooh.
Mark Houston used to say.
Yeah.
Don't give me credit for that.
No, but it's good. God
rest the soul, you know. And he's an amazing teacher. But yeah, no, but there's a lot of truth to that, you know. And it's about time too. I think time is the most valuable and important thing that we have. Shares a lot of ideology with money by principle, right? And,
talk about that.
Well, I view time as currency. You know, I'm busy. I'm very busy. and I only have so much time to spend. And I was born with a bank account at time. The trick in life, like the whole like practical joke of life, is we're all born with a bank account of time, but no one ever tells us what the balance is.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about it is we're running out. I say it all the time. Every single one of us is running out of time, so act accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed next year. You know, we're raised with this preconceived notion of getting old and going to retirement home and playing with the grandkids and great-grandkids and all that, but that doesn't happen for all of us.
Mm-mm.
You know? And what I mean by it shares an ideology with money is that you can only spend it once. If you had $100, how many times can you spend the 100? One time.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And it's the same thing with time, right? We can only spend that, spend it once.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I just read an article yesterday. They did a survey of these elderly people that were near their deaths and asked them what was their biggest regret in their life. And overwhelmingly the people spoke about not things they had done that they regretted, but they spoke about regrets of having not done things.
Wow.
You know?
That's interesting. Yeah, they don't regret the mistakes they made.
No.
Because there's actually value in those too.
Every time.
And you only open up the opportunity of failure and making mistakes by doing, right? Getting out there, swinging the bat.
Right.
Striking out, swinging the bat again. And, you know, it probably won't come to any surprise of my fondness for Gary Vaynerchuk.
Mm-hmm.
And had the opportunity to meet him and spend some time and really like a lot of his philosophy on a lot of different stuff. And he said one thing that hit me right in the heart, and that his biggest fear is regret. And I was like, man, I've never heard anyone say that, but that is so true for me too. Like, my biggest fear is regret.
Right.
And so I started to take a look at that and how that plays out in my life. And it was actually, something I was sitting with over the weekend. I did a Facebook post on it on my page there. Got a bunch of good response to it. And it started, it was actually hot as hell out. And I was by the pool. And I'm very pale skinned, so I was hiding in the shade because I didn't want to burn and be miserable all week. And I was mulling this stuff over, and that's when I just started jotting down notes on my phone about this stuff. And it's like, when you look at life, our lives, as just human beings, like 90% of our life is going to be a monotonous routine. Mm-hmm. 5 days a week, I wake up, I have my breakfast, I go to work, I do my work, I leave work, I do my routine, whether that's family, friends, gym, dinner, I go to bed, and I repeat. On the weekends, I do some extracurricular activities. I, do whatever it is I do, and life is okay. And this is not exact calculations. There's no science behind my math, but there's this other 5%, which is the wins. Mm-hmm. And 5% if you're lucky, right?
Sure.
And the wins are, getting the promotion, buying the new car, getting in the new relationship, getting married, having a child, right? All this stuff that's like the peaks and the highlights. And I really feel we spend too much time fixated on the next thing and the price we pay, if time is currency and it can only be spent once, is the time that we have right here, right now.
Truth.
Because we're looking at the ball down the street. We're constantly looking down the road for the next peak and wasting not wasting, but what I'm saying, kind of not paying attention. Sleepwalking to the 90% of life.
Right.
And it's like, and then there's this other percentage, 5%, again, not exact math, that life's going to suck.
Right.
That's not if. It's what.
Right.
And it's when.
Right.
Like, no one gets out without having hard times.
Sure enough.
You know, one of my favorite sayings, not an Eric Spofford original, but I've certainly adopted it, is that we don't pray for easier lives, we pray for the strength to endure a really difficult one. And because stuff's come in my life, more is coming down the pike that I don't see yet. Shit's gonna hit the fan. Currently in my life, stuff's just good. I'm in that 90%. I'm chopping wood, I'm carrying water, I'm going through my routine, and I'm enjoying life. But for the majority of that, I'm awake.
Right.
Right?
Right. You're appreciating that.
Yeah.
You're appreciating that. Yeah, man. You know, just another little piece I picked up. Talking about these guys that are hunting ISIS, i.e., not soldiers in our military, but guys that have served in our military, retire, and then go join these YPG, these Peshmerga fighters, Kurdish fighters who are trying to oust ISIS from Iraq still, without American military support directly, right? And this guy had gone over there, and he was like a 25-year-old kid, been in the Marines, left, went back over, and he died. And his father was a Vietnam vet, and he was talking about it. And they asked him, you know, if he felt like it was hard. And the guy just looked right at the camera. He said, "Shit, dying ain't hard. Anybody can do that. It's living that's a bitch." And I was like, fuck. You know, man.
Yeah,
you
one
know.
of those things that just hits you in the heart.
You know, when it's like that whole piece that you're talking about there is like there will be peaks and there will be valleys, but that 90% of the time, having the awareness to appreciate the value of every day, really, man, which is like a cliched shit we hear and all that, but like, man, if you put work in, and for me, it's been work around the steps and out of the book. It's led me to a place where I do find myself with a bit more of a capacity to appreciate the things that may be monotonous or regular than I had before, for sure. You know?
Tie that back into regret. Tie that back into, you know, a visual of 70, 80, 90 years old. My health is failing me.
Yeah.
It's done.
Right.
I'm in the last chapter of this book.
Right.
It's coming to a close.
Yeah.
You know? In like looking back, and I do my best, and I think I actually do a really good job to live a very full life. A very, you know, dense life, because I don't ever want to get to that point and look back and go, man, I wish I appreciated it more. I wish I made better use of that time.
Sure.
I wish I was kinder to people. I wish I did more for others. I wish I took that risk. You know, and that stuff just scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
You know, I think it drives a lot of what I do, you know, and how I live.
Yeah.
You know?
I think so.
And
I think so. Yeah.
so there's a lot of takeaway to that, you know, from that.
Yeah, there is, you know, and I think, you know, I will say this too, that, you know, I don't know necessarily by choice or by vocation or whatever, like, I feel like, you know, I'm 38 right now, and I've made choices to, like, live a life that I've pursued multiple passions with everything I have, which has led me to a place where I feel like I've had an incredibly full life thus far, done some really cool, unique, interesting things, and like I feel good about where I'm at. Like I don't feel like right now, honest to God, if I died tomorrow, I'd be like, dog, you had a good run. Like that was cool, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think there's been pieces of it that I've been scared of, especially like, God, for how long did you give me shit about, you know, me feeling like I was being vulnerable and exposed because I'll tell my honest story to people, a room of 2,000 people. But the difference between that and being vulnerable with your heart space. And like what a change that's been for me in the past 4 months of my life, and the growth that's causing in me, and recognizing that, like, dude, that's like vital shit, You know, so I give you appreciation for staying in my ear on that. You know,
No doubt.
that's what homeboys do.
That's what homeboys do, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's that inner circle, you know? And I think that, you know, it's one funny thing, and I hope there, you know, some value for the audience on this when I pull apart our relationship and our friendship, right? Is like, I love our friendship so much because it's a two-way street in, I don't want friends that are yes men.
Right.
And just tell me I'm great all the time.
Fuck that.
And, you know, and don't challenge me and don't tell me the truth and, you know, don't give me accountability. And that's something that we've shared with each other in you know, in a best friendship.
Right.
In that, like, you know, we've both said incredibly difficult things plenty of times to each other
Right.
with little regard for how each other's feels around that.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Based on, you know, that the truth may not feel good, but it'll make you better.
Ain't no doubt.
You know, it'll
No
make you
doubt.
better. Like, how free do you want to be?
Right.
And it's like, you know, a recovery practice called Steel on Steel. And I think, you know, Steel on Steel is for people that have been through the steps or are somewhere in their ninth step and practicing the latter steps. And it's a group of typically 4 is what's recommended. And it's accountability, and they meet once a month, and they go through, there's a format to it, a list of questions that touches every area of your life. Like, if you're not cool with being, like, completely vulnerable,
Don't
like,
step.
Totally, don't step.
Right.
Like, just stay out the group.
Right.
And but I think that the principle of Steel on Steel, when you talk about audit your circle and look at your friendships, because the 5 closest people to you have way more influence on you than you realize.
Oh, no question, man.
Like, looking at those principles of, like, the Steel on Steel stuff of accountability with each other and truth in a loving manner for the benefit of each other, right?
Oh, no question.
And Steel on Steel actually comes from a proverb out of the Bible that says, as iron sharpens iron, one man shall sharpen another.
I love it.
Whew. You know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, again, just back to perspective, the people you carry in your life and making the most out of this. Like, for some reason, I think human beings have this built-in, I don't know, maybe it's a defense mechanism or system or operating system that we live and intellectually know we're going to die, but very rarely internalize death in life. Like, we live, like, almost a condition of mortality is that, like, yeah, I can tell you someday I'm going to die. We all die. But my heart doesn't believe that.
Yeah.
And I think it's through that, like, operating system and belief system of us lying to ourselves that is really one of the enabling factors on how we waste time.
Bro, that is some shit right there you just said.
Is that some shit?
That is some shit, because that is like really the fucking truth right there, is that it's that idea, if you can really internalize your mortality and recognize the fact that this is not, the sand is running out of that hourglass. It is not stopped.
We're running out of time. Act accordingly.
Yes, that makes but we really don't. We don't want to grasp that truth.
No,
we don't want to.
Because people looking at their own death makes them really uncomfortable.
Hell
we
yeah.
We don't like to be uncomfortable.
No.
I tell you, for me, that what forced me to look at death and mortality was the opioid epidemic and the onset of fentanyl and the onset of mass overdose death.
Right.
And how many people that I loved losing their lives. Almost all of them.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the original crew.
Right.
The last of the Mohicans.
Man.
And, you know, so in that process over the last 5 years, it's like, it's just a weird, I honestly, you know, there's a silver lining in everything, right? I wish it didn't happen. I wish they were still here. I love them. And I miss them every day. But as a result of that, it was a process that I think we're not supposed to experience until much, much, much later in life.
Right.
When your people, your tribe, people you came up with, start to pass away. I remember when it happened to my grandmother in the last years of her life. Oh, so-and-so, we graduated high school together, she passed.
Right.
And, they start to go of natural causes just because
That's what happens.
y'all are getting towards that age where you expire, And so going through that in my late 20s, early 30s just gave me an entirely different perspective around death
Interesting.
and life.
Yeah.
More
that's
on
it.
life
Right.
as it relates to
Right.
time and value of it.
Right. 100%. 100%. Yeah, and I wouldn't, I can't sit here and be dishonest and say that for every moment of every day I am a shining star president appreciating it. Like there are still a couple minutes in the morning where I'm probably like, this shit here, But for the vast majority of the day now, it's like, I'm happy to show up.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm happy for the experience, and that's an incredible blessing that's gleaned through, whatever experiences you've had in past you've taken and thoughts you've had that get you to that place. If you can get there, man, it makes this human experience a much more enjoyable one to have.
Yeah, and I think questions are great. Like, I ask myself a lot of questions. Say, self, are you making the best use of your time? Are you doing enough for others? You touched upon something. If I was going to go tomorrow and I knew it right now, am I okay with it?
Boom.
And if not, if something pops up in that, what am I doing to take care of that? So many people walk with baggage and skeletons in the closet and just so many different scenarios of stuff that right here, right now, you're listening to this, you have the opportunity to get off your ass and do something about it before you regret it. Like that person that you aren't talking to, that you really love, but you are angry with, or have grown apart from and have unsaid things with, they're still here, and so are you.
Right.
Fucking get over it.
Yeah.
And go talk to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If you feel a way, tell them. You know what I mean? If there's something you want to do in life, I don't know, whatever. That could be start a business, join the Thursday night kickball league, whatever it is. Emmett Fox, an amazing first century Christian author, has a short writing, which I would really recommend hunting down, and it talks about the heart's desire. And what it talks about is that in our heart, there's these things that we are meant to do, and they're almost always really great things and stuff that we're really passionate about. And it's insecurity and doubt and all these other things that drown out that little voice. No, I'm not good enough for that.
Insecurity and doubt.
You know what I mean?
What are they going to think about me?
What are they going to think about me, right? What are they going to think about me if I go do, my heart's desire?
Boom.
And so many of us live these lives doing stuff that we might be okay with, but we're just not. It's I'm living this life and I'm okay with it and I've settled for this, but what I really want to do is this thing over here. But fear and insecurity and doubt is holding me back from doing it. And even for the day-to-day, but go do it.
Right.
Take the risk.
Do it.
Who cares what they think? Fuck them.
And who cares if you fail or succeed, man?
Yeah.
I want you to be successful, but don't get me wrong. No matter what, that's going to be an incredible lesson learning. You'll find more strength in yourself for having gone through the experience.
And dude, I think, once you start down that path of liberation, right?
Dude.
It's liberating. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have some success and you're going to have some failure. There's no path to success at anything that doesn't include failing,
Amen.
right?
No question.
And I think in that process, you start to develop an appreciation for the loss, an appreciation for the failure, and the lessons that come with that, the callus you start to build.
Totally.
The molding experience. Like, for me, I've had so much loss, and like, I've done very well on a lot of different avenues. I've done well in my relationships. I've done well in my family. I've done well. Like, I have all these really great things in business and, multiple different spaces that I'm in active there and all this stuff. There's probably like 90% failure for that 10% of stuff that went well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you start to really appreciate it. Like, all right, I got knocked down. I'm getting up again, though.
That's it.
And I'm coming harder and stronger and better. And through that process, somewhere for me, I lost all care and concern about what other people think of me.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I care about what you think of me.
Right.
I'm just not scared of like general judgment to hold me back.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting. I can't help but think about like just creative pursuits, ways I've had to step out in that regard, like showing artwork for the first time and like, or like stepping on stage the first time or being on the first set I was on where it's like, it's on the line and you got to show up and sometimes you fail and sometimes you succeed, but the bottom line is I haven't had one of those experiences where I haven't come through it and been grateful for it, and like you said, that's a really good way to put it, is it builds calluses to it. You start to become less concerned about those stupid thoughts of like what other people think, how you're going to be perceived, like all this bullshit that really is completely inconsequential. It's out there in the ether. It has nothing to do with your direct daily experience one way or the
100%.
other. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of value in that, man. A lot of value in just being willing to show up the right way and being okay with, having gratitude for the days that aren't a 5% one way or the other. Those 90%
That
days.
90%.
Mm-hmm.
Chop wood, carry water.
That's it.
Stay awake in the moment. Stay present. Stay current.
Totally.
Stop waiting for the next thing.
That's it.
Enjoy right here, right now.
That's it.
It's the only thing that exists.
Truth.
Cool.
Let's rock it. Close it out. That was great, man. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you again a week from now. And keep tuning in. We appreciate y'all doing so. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Peace. This is Real People, Real Recovery from the Streets of Solution with Eric Spofford.
And Jeff Hatch.
This is a podcast where we're going to talk about real recovery issues that affect real people.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the number one.
The number one podcast in the universe.
That's it.
Oh,
That's
man.
it. Here we are again. I am Jeff Hatch. With me is
Eric Spofford.
Yes.
Good to be here.
Yes, and ladies and gentlemen, today we are on the third and final part of The Mess to the Message, the journey of Eric Spofford from junkie in the street to leader of the fleet.
Did you just come up with that?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was good. I've always been good with like freestyle rap and stuff. My friends were like, dude, you should be a rap.
Wait. You're going to bust on, we've been best friends for years, and you're just going to bust on me that you're good at freestyle rapping right now?
Oh, man.
So this is eerily similar. So I bought a new home about a year and a half ago, right? And it came with a ping pong table. And so Jeff starts coming over like every night, and we got so obsessed for months.
We did.
Of playing ping pong.
Oh, yeah.
Like our other friends, if you wanted to hang out with us, we were like, you want to come over and play ping pong?
You come to the game room, because that's where we'll be.
Which really meant, do you want to come over and watch us play ping pong?
That's right.
And so I'm getting killed. I'm so not athletically inclined with anything, right?
Yeah.
If it has a ball, I suck at it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know how many touchdowns you get in baseball type of thing.
Oh my God,
you know?
I love it.
And so I'm trying to get better, but I'm just getting slaughtered at ping pong. But I'm a glutton for pain, so I just keep on showing up. And
you soldiered.
Yeah. So I start to get better. And after not like a couple games, not a couple days or even weeks, it was like months. And mind you, my homeboy here is a professional athlete, played for, I think he had the opportunity to go to the NBA or the NFL, goes to the NFL, plays football, right? But I'm like, all right, I get it. He's fucking athletically inclined, right? But after months of slaughtering me, he's like, yeah, when I won that national tennis championship.
Oh, dude, I remember the look on your face.
I dropped my paddle. I was like, dude, did you want to disclose that 3 months ago so I didn't feel so terrible about myself?
Oh, my God.
Do you think a national tennis championship translated into our ping ponging?
That's so funny. But yeah, I was enjoying it, bro. You're a very talented individual in a lot of aspects of life, so anytime I have an opportunity to whoop your ass at something, I'm going to enjoy that as much as possible.
Yeah,
So
just introduce a ball of any kind, and it's an automatic win.
Right.
You know what I mean? If I see a ball and a challenge, I'm like, this is an L for me.
You just call me. You just call me.
I'm a humble guy, though, man.
Truth.
I'm like the humblest guy you know.
Yeah, you took it.
That's a joke.
I know it was, but I wanted to ride it.
Yeah, man. I got slaughtered. Anyways.
Yeah. So.
Good to be back. I got to say, man, this has just been such an uncomfortable process. But it's been good. It's like really vulnerable and transparent, which is something I'm tempered to. I've been, sharing the story, but we've, gone to some layers pretty deep through this thing that isn't my normal 35-minute recovery talk.
Right. And I think that's the difference is plus, you and I talking to each other brings a level of kind of transparency to it that I think you can maybe avoid when you're doing that 35-minute recovery talk that we we know how to do those. This is a little bit more of an honest dialogue with your homeboy, and a lot of people can hear it. So I get it. We appreciate you doing it, though, man, for real. It's got a ton of value, and I know I've gotten a lot of feedback and people really appreciate it. So
no doubt.
Thanks.
So where did we leave off?
So we left off, really you are, at this point in the journey, you are opening the Granite House. And you've opened the Granite House, you have moved into the Granite House, and you had just started the process of kind of that program. We had moved a little further along in the story to where you had gone to Cape Cod for the first time and seen how the industry really was so much bigger, and there was more help to give than you thought possible. And really, I think that changed your perspective on things. But there's a story that I do want. It
inspired me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a story I want you to share, if you don't mind, that I've heard before that I think is just immense power in helping people kind of understand the miraculous nature of the immense process.
Okay.
It has to do with you and some time you spent in Maine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, I think the life stuff's cool. The opening a Granite House is cool, but, at this point, I'm a couple of years sober, and I'm full frontal attack on the steps. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I was in my men's process, and a lot of people drop off in the step process at the 9th step. Oh. They get terrified of it. Mm-hmm. They get stagnant. And, what's funny is the only people you really give a whole lot of negative talk to the amends process are people that haven't done the amends process.
Truth.
You know what I mean? It was one of the most rewarding and life-changing experiences of my life. It really, really set me free. Like to talk about a psychic change and a spiritual experience. And, it happened gradually throughout all the steps, but the heaviest concentration of that for me was in the 9th step. Mm-hmm. And so I spent, at this point, about a year and a half knocking on doors and having conversations and walking into stores I stole from and paying the money back and setting right the harms in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And if you've listened to the previous episodes, I left Maine with a bang. I had been arrested a bunch up there, so I had pending court stuff. and that I skipped out on when I got sober. And I also got in trouble for that armed robbery, which inevitably, in hindsight, was, I believe God, your higher power, or universe, whatever you want to call it, uses the things, we're blessed with free will, but at the same time, God will use what he has available. And
I like it.
And so I look back at that situation, which was really an act of desperation on my part. And my view for a long time on it has been that really God used what he had available to separate me from heroin and cocaine and every other thing that I was doing. And but I got in a lot of trouble for it as well. I robbed somebody with a knife.
Right.
And so I got to this place where it was just weighing so heavily on my conscience. And I knew it was next. I knew, as I was chopping away, I'm getting to the bottom of my list for what I can do locally, down here, and this thing is just glaring me in the face. And, I'm also living in paranoia and anxiety.
Sure.
Because I'm like,
who's going to knock on my door?
You know what I mean? And, so I talked to my sponsor at the time, and he gives me a consideration which made it impossible for me to not go do this amend. And he said, Eric, is your physical freedom more important to you than your spiritual freedom? And I was like, shit. I'm like, man. And so I packed my life up, man. I had been doing all sorts of service work and I'd met all sorts of people and I was doing all this stuff. So I had letters from directors of programs and people in the community and, relationships that I'd had, friends and stuff. My dad, my family, and, basically speaking to their experience with me over that past time that I was, sober and in recovery. I had dropped my dog off at my dad's and I buttoned my life up and prepared to go to prison.
So you stepping into this, what you knew was coming in this amend process, you went as far as to get letters of support from people close to you in your life to try to help kind of potentially...
I was there to make it right, but I wasn't going to be an idiot.
No, I'm with you, man. I just want people to understand the seriousness with which you took this.
Dude, the seriousness is that I was going to prison.
Right.
That's where I was at.
Right.
I'm going to do my time. And in my mind, I took this third step. I made a decision that my life is no longer my business. My conduct is. That God is the director and I'm the agent. I've turned my will over. I've surrendered it. Surrendered the rights to my life and decision-making in this in recovery, right? I had the rights of decision-making for a very long time, and I kept on making really poor decisions.
Mishandled those, yeah.
Yeah, and burning my life to the ground over and over again. And so the truth that I was sitting in this time was like, man, well, if God is everything and he's nothing, then if I go to prison, then that's where God wants me to be. And I got to piece around that with, well, there's no one single place that has a heavier concentration of drug addicts that need a solution than prison.
Wow.
And so
wow.
I actually photocopied the big book and pre-packed it into envelopes to get it mailed to me.
Wow.
Once I get in there. Yeah. I did that. I'm on a mission, dog. I'm going. And it is what it is. And then, of course, God uses the alcoholic ego, too. And I'm like, oh, man, after I do this 5 years or whatever, I'm going to have a great story today.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was, dude, but that was very real for me at the time.
Wow.
And so, I drove up to Maine, and I had this phone that the kid that I robbed, I had remembered his name. When I robbed him, I didn't even remember knowing him because I was so messed up on drugs. But then later on, I was like, oh, I knew that kid from over here and this thing, that was his name. And somehow I ended up with his name as a contact in my Nextel phone that I had at the time. Nextel.
Strong.
Yeah, strong. And dude, so I'm on 95, Route 95 on the highway on my way up there. I'm like, I'm going to call. And so I call dude. And he picks up.
Oh, my gosh.
And I make an approach. I said, hey, man, I don't know if you remember me, but my name's Eric Spofford. and harmed you or robbed you a while back. And I'm in recovery, and I remember, it got real quiet. So I remember. And I said, listen, man, I'm in recovery. I'm setting right my wrongs of my past. It's part of what I'm doing. Not asking for anything. Just wondering if you'd be willing to meet me. And so he did. He met me right then, right when I got into Maine. He was there waiting for me. I got into Portland, Maine, and he met me at the Dunkin' Donuts on St. John Street. And I made the amend, and he didn't say anything. And it was like, literally no words came out of his mouth. I made the amend, and he just, okay, yep, nodded at me. I gave him the money I took from him. I was like, well, okay, all right, we'll water under the bridge here, nothing more I can do. On to the next one. Didn't talk to him about the case, didn't ask him for anything, nothing. Just made the amend.
Right.
My side of the street.
Right.
I drive over to the courthouse. I go into the courthouse, and I go to the clerk. In my mind, like, I'm a wanted man. I'm going to tell that clerk, my name's Eric Spofford, I got some warrants, and she's going to hit the big red button, and the goon squad's going to come out and take me into custody.
No doubt.
Like, we've been looking for you, you're going to jail.
Right.
And this old woman looks at me and says, I said, hey, ma'am, I'm here, my name's Eric Spofford, I have some warrants. You're going to need to see the prosecutor up in courtroom 5, up the stairs, down the hall. And I'm like, okay. And so I got my bundle of papers, my folders and whatever, and I get upstairs and I get to the big wooden, heavy courtroom doors that I'm so familiar with. And I say a prayer, man. And I'm like, God, if I go here, will you come with me? Cool. Let's go. And I open the door and I start walking down the center aisle of the courtroom or whatever, and I see the prosecutor standing off to the left. The court must have been on recess because people up and talking. The judge isn't in there, and I lay eyes on him, and I'm making a beeline for him. You know what I mean? And as I'm walking, someone grabs me by the arm. It's Eric, and I look down, and it's this dude Johnny from meetings. And Johnny had seen me relapse and struggle for the couple of years that I was up there. And he's always very kind to me. And he tried to help me, and he's just a good human, right? He's a good member of recovery.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, man, what's up? He said, what are you doing here? I said, man, well, I've got in some trouble, been sober, making my amend. And I'm like trying to be cordial with this dude, love and tolerant. But like,
you got a mission.
I'm in, Doc. You messing with the mission right now, bro.
Right.
I'm going to prison. I don't gotta be telling. I got years to be bullshitting.
Amen.
I don't need to be bullshitting with you.
Right.
And he scoots down and says, "Hey, why don't you give me a seat? Tell me what's going on." And I'm like, "Oh man, Johnny, you're killing me." And so I sit down, and I explained to him what's going on. And he says, you mind if I look at those papers? I'm like, what? Yeah, whatever, dude. Like, here, look at them. Eric, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm a lawyer. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Maine. And maybe it's a good idea if I go talk to that prosecutor for you. And it just hit me. I was like, man, when God shows up, God shows up.
Dude.
Like, I feel like so often, even in recovery, like we don't give enough credit to how involved and how much power the spirit of the universe has, and how much control that is. Like I walked into one of the scariest things, and they got a goddamn guy in Portland, Maine. It's a lawyer that's in recovery that's here that's going to help me. Like
that met you in the rooms and
what are you kidding? And
yeah.
knew the story and was like blown away because I looked entirely different,
Right.
And he went up. He got the prosecutor, and they went and talked, and I was there forever. And in the wash, man, the armed robbery was dropped because the kid called in. No prompting from me. I just made the amend. He called in and I think dropped it or something.
Yes.
And I had like a simple assault charge and a weapons charge and a disorderly conduct, and I had all this other stuff They bundled it all up into some, I think, a misdemeanor or something. I don't even remember what the charge was that I took. And I paid a $250 fine to the clerk, and I drove home. And it was like, the whole ride home, I'm just like,
Dude.
I like, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
That story there. And, you know, I'm going to say this right now. I don't know why I'm compelled to, but it's just something that's been on my mind a little bit. Is I think people can listen to this podcast and look at the content we put out and the things we say, and they can sit on their couch and kind of make judgments and claims about who we are and what we're about based on this little snippet of information they get.
Yeah.
When you share stories like that, though, like, to me, just straight up, like, that's where the rubber meets the road with this shit. It's like your commitment to this program and to living the way that's outlined in that book shows up no more than in that situation right there in that story. And it's an incredibly powerful story to share, and I really hope people hear it for what it is. You know what I mean?
That's not only me showing up to this program and what's outlined in that book. That's this program and what's outlined in that book showing up for me.
Oh, no question.
You know?
No question, man.
And, you know, recovery's just been so good to me, man. It's given me this amazing life, such meaningful relationships. It's given me a purpose. You know, like, I was talking about this last night with a guy about being in the trenches. You know what I mean? Like, we know yet another overdose. Nothing new.
Right.
Nothing out of the usual, unfortunately.
Right.
And been a couple over the last week or two that I've known. And, you know, it's a war out there, and it's taxing, it's tiring, right? You're surrounded by a lot of people getting better and miraculous things happen in their lives, which pours into you, but there's also this take of watching people's pain and suffering, and people lose this battle and all this stuff. And it's like being caught in the middle of these two spots of seeing, like, such polar opposites, like really bad and terrible, and then just unbelievable miraculous stuff, miracles, man. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm so honored and blessed that, like, we get to do this.
Right.
That we get to be, you know, in the front lines of this.
Oh,
Not
man.
easy.
No.
But honored.
No question.
You know?
No question, man. No question about that. And it's interesting. I mean, it's so true, because it is two complete polar opposites that we experience on a very regular basis.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like, that ultimate joy and that ultimate sadness is, definitely honored and grateful for it. So let's get back to it. So
let's wrap this story up.
You're coming back from, that experience. I'm sure, just like, dude, you took a step, it was fire coming out of you, man. I mean, like, I just can't imagine how fired up you were at that point after that experience.
Dude, fired up, I mean, I guess that's one way to describe it, but just leveled. Absolutely quiet and looking at this thing of, like, you know, like I said, when God shows up, God shows up.
You cannot question it. Like, it's right out. He is everything or nothing, and he's everything.
Like, you know, there's two perspectives to walk out of that situation with. Well, like, wow, what a miracle, or wow, what a coincidence.
Come on.
Exactly. You know, and so I was really caught in that very quiet space of, like, man, I just can't believe how powerful this stuff is. You know, and I went back and you know, I'd been to that Cape Cod, and I got to the grind on, you know, growing Granite House. We moved into a new location. We grew it into this extended care program, and I spent about the next 5 years on the road. A lot. It's where we met.
Right.
It's where we met. I don't know what part of the country we were in when we met, but it wasn't home for either one of us.
No, Arizona somewhere. I don't know. Maybe some whatever.
Wherever.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I got to know folks that worked in addiction treatment and, you know, recovery deal from coast to coast. And I ran Granite House when I was home, and I ran it from the phone when I was gone, and I grew it into this extended care program. We had treatment centers all over the country sending us folks post their 30-day program.
Sure enough.
And to be with us for, you know, longer lengths of time. And life was really good, man.
Yeah.
You know? Somewhere along there, I had a baby.
Yeah.
Had my son, 2011. And which was, you know, before everything started to really take off. Life was really simple, just running Granite House.
Well, you say that now. because retrospectively it's simpler than it is now. But at the time, it certainly wasn't simple.
Yeah.
I mean, you're trying to turn this place into one of really the premier young men's extended care in the country is what you turn it into. So that's not simple work. And you're a new dad. That's not simple. But I know now, retrospectively, when we go from what we were to what we are now.
I'll tell you something, man. One thing that has been just a constant truth in my life, for good and bad, and a lot of good and bad is how you perceive it.
Truth.
Things just never go as they're planned.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't plan on being a heroin addict. I didn't plan on, getting sober. I didn't plan on working in the treatment business. I didn't plan on being a dad.
Right.
And, I wanted to be a dad, and I really, really wanted to be a dad. I love being a dad. It's like one of the coolest things I still get to do. And that's in contrast to having a pretty cool life. But, I ended up a single dad, and through some twists and turns and a story of its own, I ended up a single dad with a 5-week-old infant by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that, thank God his mother came back around to do well and do better than she was doing at the time, close to a year later. But we can sit here and talk about, the cool stories and, the growing into the national program and, taking Granite House and growing that into Granite Recovery Centers and all the cool stuff I've done and all that stuff. But I got to tell you, it would be unjust to not really shed some light on that. Like, I've been sober 11 and a half years and my life has been hands down, undoubtedly unbelievable and amazing. Some of the coolest stuff has happened. I've met the best people. It's just unreal, the amount of stuff. But I've also been through a lot of shit.
Dog.
I've also been through a lot of pain. There's been a lot of stuff that has hurt. Raising an infant. I was 26 years old. I took a baby home that day I didn't expect to take home full time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I had to figure out how to raise this little thing that looked like a mini alien that cried a lot on my own. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't even cook myself dinner.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I ate takeout 3 times a day.
Yeah.
That's how I was a little single 26-year-old guy working.
Right.
And some of my biggest concerns prior to that was like, how long am I going to be able to meditate this morning, and how many grams of protein did I eat today? You
Right.
know what I mean? And that was hard. I mean, it was unbelievable, and but that was really, really difficult and painful. And it's everything's kind of run so parallel to each other. It's like so weird. It's hard I can look back and talk about year segments of time and tell an entire story that is tailored to what's been difficult and what's been painful. And I can go back and talk about those same years and talk about just miraculous stuff that's happened in my life.
Right.
It happened in me and around me.
Right.
And it's literally happened simultaneously.
I was talking about that the other day with somebody close to me in my life about the paradoxes that we get exposed to in lives in recovery and sobriety. And I think everybody does, but we have a little keener awareness to it when you're sober for it. And just that it's all perspective.
It's all perspective.
But I mean, golly, there's some amazing, I think anytime you walk this path of, and I don't like the phrase, but it's real, is living life on life's terms, i.e. taking life on fully aware and in full comprehension of all the things that are happening to you, because of you, and around you for 12 and a half years, you're not going to stand at the end of that line without some scars and some nicks, man. It's just the nature of it. Now, I know I can't speak for you. I can speak for myself and say I wouldn't trade one of those nicks or scars. It's maybe what I am, but be guaranteed they're going to come.
But the perspective, part of the psychic change of recovery is the perspective around it. I used to be terrified of the pain. Mm-hmm. I used to live under a pretense that what feels good is good, and what feels bad is bad, and that's just not true. When I look at the truth behind that, heroin felt great.
Right.
Almost killed me, ruined my life.
Right.
Truth felt terrible, set me free, and
Truth.
changed me from the inside out.
Yep.
Couldn't have survived without it.
Amen.
You know what I mean? And so now, like, in the face of the pain, it's like, I know there's a lesson here.
Amen.
I know that, you know, there is still pieces of me that exist that look like a lumpy piece of coal, and God's putting a lot of pressure on those things, trying to turn it into some more of his diamonds.
Right. We
You know?
talked about that before. That's enlightenment potentially, is when you're able to sit in that most painful experience and appreciate it for the growth that's coming in it.
I won't go that far as call me enlightened, but
I'm not calling you enlightened, goddamn, trust me. Because if you were, you wouldn't sit in this
Yeah.
room, you'd be floating up on the ceiling right now, and I'd be able to see that happen. But I mean, like, you
Yeah,
know, that's
no,
the
I feel
journey.
you.
You know,
I feel
that's the
you.
journey.
you know, and so as far as my story, man, you know, the details of what took place from there, I think it's important to know where I came from and how far down and for how long that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm really just a graced guy that's done a lot of work to maintain that grace. But I'm the walking dead, man. This is life in the bonus round for me.
Right.
I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
A lot of us aren't. This
Right.
isn't just me. But, you know, and now just so blessed. You know, I carried on with Granite House, and I carried on with being a dad. And the idea of a dream of mine to open an actual treatment center came up, and through a set of circumstances, I found a property that I couldn't afford, and I made a lowball offer, and I was told to F myself and get off the property. And that was the summer of 2012, I think. Mm-hmm. And then that winter, I went back and purchased that property for half of my original offer.
Mm-hmm. With paddle 164.
I didn't realize it till after the auction. My voting paddle was page 164, which is a really significant number to anyone in the 12 steps, because it's the amount of pages that the 12 steps are laid out on. Mm-hmm. You know, it's with a program. The program is outlined in the first 164 pages. You know, and it's just been one thing of doors opening and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing in front of me. That property ended up being New Freedom Academy. Mm-hmm. I spent 2.5 years fighting legal and zoning and all this stuff to get the place open, and I got it open, and the next month, the state of New Hampshire called me and wanted me to look at another property to open a treatment center. I'm like, well, man, you know, I just opened one.
Right.
What do you want me to do now?
Right.
And I went up and looked at that and saw that property, and that ended up being Green Mountain Treatment Center. And then the sober livings, and then all this stuff, which is, you know, personally, my life has excelled too. I feel, you know, I'm 33 years old, and I feel like I know less than I did in my first year of sobriety. Of course, that's not true. I just know that there's so much more for me to know.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
My glass is it's half full and it's half empty, because
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to just keep on pouring more in and continuing to have more and more experience around this stuff and recovery in life, you know? And it's an honor and a privilege to just be able to have the opportunity and get to show up every day to serve at Grant Recovery Centers. I'm in love with this company. Mm-hmm. I'm in love with the organization, and I'm in love with the purpose. I'm in love with what we do here. I'm in love with the team members I get to serve with, and you know, I absolutely adore our clients. I just love them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's our tribe, man?
I was with a bunch of them last night. They're just doing so good, you know? And it's cool, you know?
It's been cool to see the mission to, like, the scope of people we can serve expand.
Oh, yeah. Man.
Right? Because when I came on, we were just young men 18 to 35 in an extended care setting. Now we have grown to...
We got an 82-year-old woman in treatment right now, and we got a bunch of 18-year-olds, and we got a bunch of everybody in between.
It's
all
just
ages,
awesome.
men, women, demographics. We got professionals, and we got parolees.
That's it, man.
We got all sorts of folks.
And everyone's getting exposed to solutions. So it's like... it's a gift and it's a blessing, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it. So,
No doubt.
Really cool, man. So onward we go from here, right?
Onward we go. You know what I mean? We really summarized that last 10 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
And,
where you're at with it. I get it.
Yeah. I'm just, there's a lot more to tell. You'll have to wait for the book.
There you go. There you go.
I just don't have it in me right now, and I don't know how entertaining this is for people. You know what I mean? But that's all right.
No, you did great. You did great, and appreciate you being so open and honest and forthright. And people can now trace kind of the history and the journey. And I think that's it. That's what it's all about. And we'll return to regular programming on the next episode, right?
No doubt.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you listening. We'll see you next time.
Peace. This is Real People, Real Recovery from the Streets of Solution with Eric Spofford.
And Jeff Hatch.
This is a podcast where we're going to talk about real recovery issues that affect real people.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the #1 podcast in the universe. Real People, Real Recovery from the Streets of Solution with your host, Jeff Hatch, and
Eric Spofford.
there we go.
Sorry. I was literally just thinking about, I have such a hard time every episode not laughing at the dumb face you make while you say that. like
I
it's just so
love it.
enthused
I
with
am,
it. You know what I mean?
I
Like, we said we're the best podcast in the universe.
Oh my God,
Did you
that's
see that?
so
We said we're the best.
That's
There's
so
a lot
funny.
of podcasts in the universe.
That's so funny. It's true, and it also is like this thing in me. I think from the time I was a kid, I kind of wanted to be a radio guy. So anytime I get the chance to like intro something on the radio, I get giddy like a little kid. All right, so
Man.
here we are on a Monday. Where we left off was some dense content. For those of you who listened to the last episode, we really got to hear a really interesting introspective look at Eric's journey, and we really got through most of the mess last time. And today we're going to move into the message, which I'm really looking forward to hearing. And so, I don't know, you remember where we left off? Because I do.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Right? Kind of that last day of my addiction.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, we were at
Is that
December
accurate?
7th, 2006.
To the bookmarked date. Yeah, I gotta say, man, I left here last Friday, I guess, and I was just beat.
Sure.
I was like, God, man, that took a lot out of me.
It does.
You know, it's like going back through all that stuff. It's different and more in depth than telling your story.
You ain't kidding.
You know, at some recovery event or meeting or something.
Right.
Yeah, so for everyone listening, if you just tuned into this episode, the episode before this, I talked about growing up and my addiction. And I got sober December 7th of 2006. And what happened, I'll recap it real quick, is that I was kind of at the end of my rope on a real desperate run, shooting heroin and cocaine, and had robbed these guys, some guys that were selling drugs. They kidnapped my dog,
Murph.
Muggsy.
Oh, Muggsy, that's it.
Murph was the gentleman we met in Lawrence.
Hey.
Not to be confused for the one-eyed gangster dog.
Right.
You know, and yeah, it's a very dramatic, intense story. But what happened was I robbed these two guys and then went to jail. And while I was in jail, they robbed like every worldly possession that I had, which was not much. You're talking about furniture. They even took the furniture out of the trap house.
Wow.
It was like stuff that I dragged in, literally everything I dragged in off a sidewalk somewhere. I still had leaves in between the cushions and stuff.
Yeah.
And they took that. It was impressive.
Wow.
And took my toothbrush, shower curtain.
Wow.
I mean, like, wiped the place out.
Wow.
I was like, man. And, but they kidnapped my dog, and so I was out looking for them. with intentions on being violent out of anger, and met a kid that was looking to buy some dope, some heroin, and I ended up robbing him with a butcher knife, and the gig was up. So the last time I actually got high, I was hiding in a closet. I was desperate and not that smart at the time. I actually robbed him 3 buildings down from the trap apartment I was staying in. And so by the time I spent the money on the dope and made it back there, the police had shown up and were like combing the neighborhood, like the entire police department showed up.
Right.
And so, I was terrified. I was like, man, Maine doesn't play. They hand out football scores for prison sentences for stuff up there, And I'd seen a lot of people go away for a long time. And so I called my mom, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, from the closet. I was literally hiding in the closet. And I was like, Ma, you got to come get me tomorrow morning. You got to be here. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, just be here in the morning. And at first she didn't want to come. She's like, and I forget what choice words I had for her, but I basically, emotionally blackmailed her the best I could. And so early, I think like 6:37 in the morning, the next morning, my mom showed up on Grant Street in Portland, Maine, in the hood. And I ran out of the front of the house and dove into the back seat. Go, go, go!
Unbelievable.
Like, what is going on? And I just remember starting to get sick, man, and coming back to New Hampshire, like, God, this isn't good. And, she was gracious enough to let me stay at her house. It's a small house in Nashua, New Hampshire. And when I got down there, I started getting really sick, getting into withdrawals, but something came over me where I was just done. I was done. I called an old friend of mine who at one point was my sponsor that knew the guys that I robbed, and set the whole situation up to get my dog back. So I did get the dog. I've told that story for 10 years now and always forget to say, like, after I got sober, I got my dog back. So people are like,
what happened to Muggsy?
I tell the whole story, leave the podium, and people are like, what happened to the dog? And I'm like, oh, I got him back. He died 3 years ago.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. And, so I got the dog back, and I'm staying on Mom's couch, and I'm in withdrawals, and I walked to my first meeting back.
This isn't your first time to the rooms, though, but this is your first time.
No, we went over all that
Right.
history. I'd been involved many times. I'd struggled in and out over and over again. So I knew where to go. I'd already had a period of sobriety where I'd worked the steps, and, I didn't lose that experience. So it set me up like I knew what to do, and I knew what I needed to do anyway, at least I thought I did. And so I, as sick as I was, walked to these meetings every day, and the kind people of the 12-Step Fellowship took me in, and I was emaciated, track marks up and down my arms, probably 130, 135 pounds, literally 100 pounds heavier now than I was when I got sober. And funny story, I I was like 3-4 days sober, right? And I'm sick as hell, and this kid keeps on calling my phone. Somehow I managed to keep a cell phone. And I used to sell him drugs up in Maine. There's this kid, he was staying in a program, actually. He hadn't been thrown out for relapsing yet. And he was from Cape Cod, from a wealthy family, and he used to just use me to get his stuff. And he keeps calling me, man, can you get me something? Can you get me something? Can you get me something? I don't even know if I've ever told you the story. I'm like, dude, I'm trying to get sober. Leave me alone. I'm trying to get sober. Leave me alone. He's calling back to back, begging. And these are the influences that you have to step away from.
Right.
And,
Right.
When you get sober, it's like, it's simple because you only have to change one thing, but that one thing is everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? I had to leave those relationships, leave those friendships, and really just do me and focus on that. And so anyway, after like 2 days of this kid calling me, I was like, you know what, dude? Come on down. I'm in Nashua. What do you want? He wanted a finger of dope. I told him $600. And so he comes down and he picks me up at the Rite Aid on Main Street in Nashua, and I rob him. Mm-hmm.
You want to leave me alone? I'm going to rob your ass so you leave me alone.
Yeah. I had him bring me over to the YMCA and, set this whole fictitious story. They were meeting someone up, and he pulled the money out, and I whacked him and took his money and ran. Mm-hmm. And so now I get the $600, and I'm running through these neighborhoods, thinking in my mind, I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I didn't know what to do, so I went to Burger King, bought some food, and then went to the Saturday night meeting. Yeah, I literally robbed the kid, went to the Saturday night meeting, raised my hand in the meeting, told them what happened, and then asked them all to come to Denny's with me. And bought the entire meeting Denny's.
Oh,
can you imagine?
My God.
Like, at the time, I was so insane that made perfect sense.
Unbelievable.
Like, I'm some sort of newcomer Robin Hood or something.
Right.
Like, I robbed this money out of the dope game, and I'm going to buy you all eggs and hash browns at Denny's and coffee.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And so, I get out to Denny's, and I'm sitting there, and I'm absolutely terrified, and I'm filled with anxiety, and, social anxiety. I'm having such a hard time just talking to people and acting like a normal human while not on drugs.
Of course.
And I'm sick, and I'm like sitting there all introverted and, caught in skull prison.
Sure enough.
I'm having like 15 conversations, but none of them are with the people I'm actually with. They're all going on in my mind.
That's so good.
And this guy, Kevin, is sitting like kind of diagonal from me, and he's talking, and I'm picking up on the conversation, and I could tell a couple people at the table work for him. And then, so I'm paying attention, and then I kind of boil it down. He's got some sort of call center or something right here in town, and he's got a bunch of people in recovery working for him. So I said something along the lines of, man, you should give me a job. My good social grace. And he says, yeah, why is that? And I said, man, because I'm a junkie. I could sell anything. And he says, well, it's Saturday night, right after the meeting. He says, why don't you show up 9 a.m. on Monday morning? We'll talk about it. And so 9 a.m. Monday morning, I walk down there, a couple mile walk, right? December. And I show up to this place, and it turned, mind you, I'm this like, at the time, I'm crazy, and my reality is I'm like a homeless heroin addict with a pathetic existence. But in my mind, I might as well have been John Gotti.
Oh, you were. Oh, yeah.
Like, I might as well have been Al Capone himself.
Oh, my gosh.
I just thought I was so gangster, man.
Mm-hmm.
And, here I am, and I'm getting sober, and I'm still sick. I'm still, brutally ill.
Right.
I'm on waiting lists for every program in the state because, I can't stay at my mom's house.
Mm-hmm.
I need to do something. I was made clear every day. This is very temporary.
Right.
And I get down there, and what a blow to the ego. And he says, you know what we do here? I said, I don't have any clue. And it's some sort of sales or on the phone or something. He says, yeah, man, we have all the contracts for the different police departments and police organizations for their nonprofits, and we collect donations from them. So for the next handful of months, I sat in a cubicle with a headset on with an auto dialer all day long going, hey, Sue, thanks for picking up. My name's Eric. I'm calling from the New Hampshire Police Association, doing our annual fundraiser again this year. Just hoping we can count on your support. Can we send you an invoice for $10? What could you do for this year?
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And oh, man, it was just like, I remember looking up and being like, of course. Like, God's got jokes.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, man, if you pay attention, God has one sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
He really does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was my start, man. God was so good to me. I really believe that, people talk about, finding recovery or whatever it is, and they use terminology, and I'm guilty of it too, like I got sober on. And even though we talk like that, I don't think there's any truth in that statement, because if I was so good at getting sober, then I probably would have done it a lot better than I tried so many times, right? And what I believe happened for me was God separated me from heroin and cocaine and everything else on that day of December 7th. And then he started to really reveal himself in my life. I also believe that, and my experience is that God has been no more and no less with me any moment that I've been on his earth here, right? It's just how awake to that am I.
That's it. It's all awareness, yep.
It's not like, we're seeking God, we're finding God.
No.
That's like a fish trying to find the water.
Amen.
Are you aware there's water or not?
Right.
And so, I got the job, and I start looking for a place to live because I got to get out. And I find a studio apartment it's like a little one-bedroom studio type of place in the middle of the tree streets, which if you're in any city, coast to coast, if they call it the tree streets, it's not good. It's like MLK Boulevard.
Right.
It's universally not good.
Right.
And this neighborhood was certainly not good, but I found a little apartment, and I called and made an appointment to look at it, and I walked over there after work, and the guy, real nice old man, I forget his name, and he's talking to me, and he's asking me questions, and I just lay it all out. Man, I'm real early in recovery. I'm trying to start my life off. I need a shot. And he gave me one. He let me move in with very little money, and I paid him. I paid off the security deposit over like 6 months, and moved in. I remember we were looking at the apartment, and it was all empty, right? And there was one couch, and it was like just this run-down, ratty, beat-up couch with, when you sit on the couch, there's the cushions, but then underneath the cushions is the stuff that supports them. It's the type of couch, when you sit on it, your butt sinks all the way to the floor. And he's going, yeah, and we'll get this couch out of here for you. I was like, hey man, don't worry about it. I'll take care of that.
Yeah, you will, because that's my bed, baby.
That's my bed, baby. Yeah, man. And I moved in, and hindsight 2020, man, looking back, that was some of the best times of my life. Things were so simple. I moved in there, I jumped in, I started working the steps. And those are the early days, man. Now, when you look at the temperature of the recovery community, the 12 steps have just snowballed.
Right.
The snowball effect since I got sober. When I got sober, you would go to meetings all over the place, and you wouldn't hear anyone talking about working the steps.
Right.
You would hear people using meetings as group therapy, complaining, throwing a bunch of slogans around, talking about staying sober one day at a time by their own choice. I woke up and made a decision to not drink today, and and all this stuff. There also weren't a lot of young people sober. In fact, there were like no young people sober,
right.
Almost none. And from that experience of having worked the steps up in Maine, prior to this, I knew what I needed to do, so I got a sponsor that wasn't local. And I started through the process. And at the time, I wish I had more gratitude for what it was when it was there. Looking back on it, man, walking to those meetings, and I didn't have a license for the first year, and working the steps, and I was probably 3-4 months sober, and I read my 5th step, and immediately started just caught fire with this, breathing fire, and sharing through all the meetings. And, it actually meant something more than it does now as far as standing out to be, a 12-step or a big book guy.
Sure.
It was controversial, which probably made me like it more.
I bet.
Yeah. I would go into meetings and talk about being recovered from drug addiction and alcoholism, and having had an experience with this work, and and all this stuff, and living a spiritual life, to a bunch of people that didn't subscribe to that stuff, and I didn't make a lot of friends.
You pissed a lot of people off.
I did.
Yeah.
And but it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
And I think when we have an experience with this work, we catch fire. And Don Pritz said that by the time you've hit step 7, if you haven't caught fire, then it's not working. But I think that levels out over time a little bit.
Sure.
You know, at the time, I had a big book that closed across the pages in permanent marker. It said, bullshit filter. And I used to walk into meetings and put it down on the table.
Oh my God.
I'm like, yeah, baby.
Oh my God.
I'm here to do some shit.
Oh my God.
And, man, things are just so simple. And I began to sponsor a lot of guys, a lot of guys. And that really was my life. At this point, I'd gone back to work with my dad. Our relationship had started to mend some. And I left that job and went back into logging and tree removal and excavation and doing all of that. And so I'm, you know, that type of work is a blood sport. So I'm working hard early in the morning all day long and coming home and meeting sponsees before the meeting, going to the meeting with the sponsees and working with them after the meeting.
Yeah.
And just like 110% committed to recovery. No, that's where a lot of the stuff that you see with people getting sober, like hanging out with the old friends, just running their life, not being entirely immersed and dedicated and devoted to this thing. It often gives me pause.
Yes.
And I look at my own experience and I'm like, man.
And just that your own experience, my own experience, and the experience gleaned through a decade of being around this stuff.
Yeah.
It gives us pause for reason, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And you know, pretty soon, like the big book talks about is creating the fellowship we desire. Guys start to stay sober. And, you know, the up-and-comers, guys that I sponsored, were dug in. They were having experience with this work, and we started, you know, had this little crew. We started our own meeting on Wednesday nights at Keystone Hall, this state-funded detox that was in this old dilapidated mill building. And, you know, wasn't pretty, but it had character.
Right.
And, yeah, it was just great, man. And
And how long did that go on for?
a couple of years.
Cool.
Couple of years. I transitioned out of it when I started Granite House in 2008.
Right.
You know, I had every intention at the time of keeping up with it, but, you know, I was 40 minutes away.
Sure.
And, you know, started really, you know, I was living at Granite House.
Right.
And that's really how Granite House, that's how this whole entire organization was born. And that's why I would get so, like, I love talking about the history of it, looking back, because I just didn't realize what was happening when it was happening.
Of course not.
That, you know, the big book workshops we ran in the detox, the sponsorship, the service work we did in those state-funded facilities, all that stuff is what really inspired me to open the first sober living in the whole state. And that's what the motivation came from. And then, you know, when I started, it's like so funny. God's got jokes. You know, when I was really felt called upon to start Granite House, you know, I was 2 years sober. I had my own life going on, my own affairs and all this. And it seemed crazy to give that up, to move into a sober living house with 11 guys that were newly sober, and I had to run the place.
Right.
You know, and I did that for a year and a half. And
that was in Derry.
yeah, it was in Derry. You know. I remember when we found the building, it was a multifamily, 4 Union Street in Derry, New Hampshire. And when we found the building that was going to be the sober house, and we put it under contract, and we got a closing date of October in 2008, I believe it was. And the day I woke up, all excited to go close, you know, go buy this building and start the journey, I turned the news on, and the stock market had crashed. And it was the beginning of the recession.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yep. Right at the end of 2008 there.
Wow.
Right? And I remember watching the news, just sitting there drinking a cup of coffee like, well, shit. You know, and I remember getting a call. I'm like, hey, man, we still good to close? And Eric, nothing's in the whole country is closing today. We're in financial crisis. And it ended up closing a couple weeks later.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it got done. I really could not believe it got done. And, you know, moved in there, and, you know, everything just came together so seamlessly. When I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing as far as purpose and mission and life, because it really feels like I'm just going with the current. I'm not like walking upstream, fighting my way through everything. I'm going. You know, a guy from my home group was getting laid off from his job right about when I started Granite House, or I was about to, right? And he was talking to me. He says, "Hey man, I heard you opened some sort of." No one knew what a sober house was then.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, "A sober what?" And I'm like, "A sober living home. We're gonna live there and stay sober." You know, and everyone thought I was just crazy, and like it's just doing something they'd never seen done before.
Right.
You know, and so he worked at some furniture manufacturing distribution company, and that was going out of business. And so there was this whole warehouse in Lowell with bureaus and nightstands, and you know, I had to get my own mattresses, but beds. They supplied furniture to college dorms and military barracks.
Unreal.
Yeah, I got set up for
Unreal.
nothing.
That's awesome.
He said, "Man, you come down here, you can take whatever you want. We're trying to get rid of it all. Just get it out of here." And so I went,
Unreal.
yeah, it was cool, man. So I went down there and
Decked out the Granite House.
decked out the Granite House. Yeah, man. You know, and at this time, it was everything was so alive. I mean, it is now. I'm just a little more tempered to it. Everything had become so alive. I was sponsoring so many guys. They were sponsoring other guys. I was cranking along on my 9th step, making amends, which I hear so many people. Quick thing about amends. We did a whole nother episode on amends, which if you're listening and you haven't heard it and you're in recovery or interested on what the amends process looked like, please download it and listen. But, you know, so many people are scared of the 9th step. I got to go see all these people. I caught fire with it.
Yeah.
And I had some scary amends.
Right.
I've made amends from robbing almost every big box store you can think of.
Right.
I've made amends for robbing people and hurting people and just all this crazy stuff I made amends with. But this is really when I was in that couple-year process of week in, week out, the next 3, you know, this is what I'm doing.
Right.
And so I'm out there, you know, doing all that and setting everything right in the world. And as I go, the more alive I feel. You know, it's just this unbelievable experience.
Well, you were shedding weight, man. You were shedding all the weight, man, and being cleaned up enough to be aware of your existence, which is incredible. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's so much power in that. And then you got lit by it, and the force you turn into by carrying a message of you know, depth and weight that enlivens other people, that then spins into something greater. And it was all really coming together. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was just wild, man. Looking back on it, I didn't realize it at the time. I felt it, but didn't realize it. And looking back on it, it was just all very divine. It was just all, you know, kind of everything coming together. And, you know, it was really the thing that sparked Granite Recovery Centers.
Right.
All of that was born out of these times and out of the work that was done back then. And, you know, now Granite Recovery Centers as an organization is just so much larger than me, right? It's a life of its own.
Sure enough.
And the community of its own.
Sure enough.
And not only the work that we do in the organization, in treatment, in sober living, and in outpatient detox, all that stuff, but the movement of people, the community of people that are mission and purpose driven, that are out doing service work, sponsoring people, stuff that I'll never even see.
Totally, man.
I see the smoke, but I don't always see the fire of all
way.
the work that's being done out there, and it times so perfectly with, you know, the progression of the opioid epidemic, the onset of methamphetamine coming into this area, fentanyl coming in, and, you know, it really developed an organization to boots on the ground.
Right.
You know, in the trenches on what this really is, which is war.
That's it.
You know?
That's it.
And, yeah, so I did that for 1.5 years, man. It burnt me out.
Sure enough.
It certainly did. You know, if one more guy knocked on my window at 11:30 at night for something, I was about to lose my mind after I'd been there for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
It was my time to go.
Sure.
One of the best times of my life. Some of the best people that I've ever met. came from that first year and a half at Granite House. I mean, Russell Beebe, a clinical director at Green Mountain Treatment Center, was like the fourth guy to ever get there.
Unbelievable.
He got sober there. Yeah. So I've literally known him for 10 years. He went off to get a master's degree and be a counselor and then be a supervisor and get all this clinical experience and come back to the organization to be the clinical director of our largest treatment center.
Think about that.
It's wild.
Dude, that's incredible. Folks, like anybody who's listening and it's just like you're driving in your car or whatever you're doing, catch that vibe real quick. The fourth client that ever went through the Granite House in its initial iteration is now the clinical director of our largest treatment facility here 10 years later. That's incredible, man.
Yeah, it was cool.
Jeez.
That was cool, man.
Yeah. So after a year and a half, you move out. You get somebody in there to manage it, right?
Russell.
Yeah!
He's also, it's funny, he was also the first paid employee.
Wow!
And, yeah, for $100 a week stipend and free rent.
Living the dream.
Living the dream, man. Living the dream. And he was, but still to this day, one of the best house managers of any sober living we've ever had. He was great.
Oh my God, that's great.
You know, he moved in. He's such a great guy. He's a perfect clinical director. He moved in with his French horn.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
Oh my
and
God.
like the most trouble he ever got in was like, Russell, you're playing your French horn a little too loud. And the other guys are getting irritated about
Oh
it.
my
you know.
God.
But he also was fearless, man. We would get some pretty rugged dudes.
Yeah.
And he would just come right up and, house manager Russell, hey man, you need to make your bed. You need to do this. Like he was so detail oriented. He did not miss a beat.
I love it.
Yeah, I was still grateful for the time and service he put in back then, you know. And man, we had a great time. A lot of those guys worked with me. I was still doing the tree removal and excavation company and all that stuff. And you know, after I was about a year in, and everything just happened in such perfect sequence. My vision for my life at this period of time is that I'm going to do construction and excavation and all this, you know, work that I've been involved in my entire life.
Right.
And I have this, you know, sober house and
Cool.
That's what I'm going to do. You know, I don't know why. I just thought like, this is my life. This is going to be what it is.
Right.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to, you know, have that on the side and have fun helping these guys and all that. And then I got word of an addiction treatment conference. Mind you, I'm in a landscape that we don't have like a private facility. We didn't, you know,
Sure.
we had a handful of state-funded facilities, and I was the only sober living.
Right.
And I was like, what is this? And I went down. It was the Cape Cod Symposium on Addictive Disorders in 2009. And so I went down there after Granite House had been open for 11 months at that point, and I met so many great people and saw programs represented from all over the country and saw the really incredible work that was being done. And I got so inspired. I got so unbelievably inspired. And I was like, man, I need to be doing this. I need to be doing this full time. Like, I need to grow this thing. And so I came back home from the conference and started doing my research and grinding it out. And I remember it was probably about a month later, I went to talk to my dad because I'm his only son. And since I was a baby, my dad's language with me was, my only son, going to take over the family company. You know, probably why I thought that this is what I'll do for the rest of my life is literally my entire life. It's what I was told I was going to do for my entire life.
Right.
And, you know, I'm running the company at this point, and I'm doing everything from running the operation, running the jobs, bidding the jobs, doing the admin work, answering the phone, collecting the money, paying the bills. You know, I'm full game at running this deal for my dad. And I got to go talk to him and have a conversation and a leap of faith and tell him, you know, I got to go full time. I got to go. I'm not going to do this anymore. And it was an incredibly tough conversation.
I bet.
Yeah, it was really, really hard to have that conversation with him, man. And that started the next chapter.
The next chapter.
You know, we got to work on this thing.
Yeah. So I think let's cut it there. And we'll come back with part 3 on Friday when we go from how this baby started to what she's become, and how you became a new man in recovery and the man you've become through that journey.
What a history lesson. It's almost, yeah, it's pretty cool going through it and remembering those days.
Unreal.
Half the time you just forget. You know what I mean?
Life goes, bro.
Yeah, it's busy.
We're going, dog.
It's busy and it's loud.
Yeah,
day to day.
Yeah.
It's fast.
Yeah. Cool.
Look forward to it.
All right. Well, appreciate you, man. Thank you for sharing so openly again. And folks, we'll see you later on this week. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.
Peace. We live.
We live! Can you hear me? We're good.
Mic check.
Chickadee, check yourself. All right, should I record?
Yeah, hit record.
Let's do it.
We got some people logging in on the Facebook Live right now.
On the Facebook Live. Hey.
Hey, Patricia. How are you? All right, we're going to get the show started. And are we recording?
Yeah, we're on.
All right. You want to kick us off?
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now tuning in to the greatest podcast in the universe. Welcome to Real People, Real Recovery from the Streets of Solution with your hosts, Jeff Hatch and
Eric Swafford. Delayed reaction there. What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning back in. We're on Facebook Live now, so we may answer questions if they come out from the viewers on there. In this episode, we're going to talk about some pretty serious subject matter about some recent changes to the Medicaid structure, the reimbursements here in the state of New Hampshire, and the effects that that's going to have. And I think it's important, that this was really flown under Medicaid expansion. So, in other words, it's been reauthorized this year. A lot of people, especially on the recovery advocacy scene and treatment scene, advocated for it. And I don't think they fully looked under the hood well enough. And so in this, generally 50,000 more New Hampshire citizens are going to be covered with Medicaid. And I think it's important to understand kind of that system, right? So there are different providers that manage Medicaid. Currently we have New Hampshire Healthy Families, WellSense, and Better, and then also Harvard Pilgrim and Blue Cross Blue Shield manage some Medicaid. And so some of those companies reimbursed day rate for treatment at $162.60 per day, which is...
That's for residential, correct?
That's for residential treatment. And I want to put this into perspective. This is a licensed healthcare facility with round-the-clock care. So 24 hours in one of these facilities, and the reimbursement is $162. And I've been beating this bandwagon for a long time that it's not sustainable. It's not. So how a lot of providers in the state have been getting by is that some of the Medicaid reimbursed at the $162.60, and then there were these other policies that were managed by Harvard Pilgrim and Blue Cross Blue Shield that were premium access plans.
Access plans,
That's
right.
what it was, premium access plans. And these plans really mirrored commercial insurance. And so for most of the facilities, they took those policies, and they also took Medicaid policies. And so the premium access plans paid at a much higher rate. From what I'm understanding, it's $300 to $500 for the day rate was the scope that a lot of the providers were getting reimbursed, depending on their contract and negotiations and whatnot. And so for years now, how facilities in the state of New Hampshire that take Medicaid have been surviving is by a blended average, a mixture of the both. And they're taking a loss on the Medicaid payments, and they're making it up with premium access. And so the pickle that we're in now, the ecosystem of treatment, all these facilities, is that the state of New Hampshire has gutted the premium access program. That as of January 1, those aren't going to exist anymore. So they're basically taking the entire Medicaid population and putting them on plans that would reimburse at $162 a day. So I've been working for the last week with most of the big providers within the state. And we have a press conference tomorrow at the State House in Concord at 10 a.m. for anyone that would like to attend. We'd love the support. The more people there showing support, the better. And this is a group, let me remember if I can remember everyone off the top of my mind. Farnham Center, Keystone Hall, Phoenix House of Keene and Dublin, I believe, Southeastern New Hampshire Services out in Dover, Families in Transitions, I think everyone that's...
Did you say Keystone Hall?
Keystone Hall, yeah.
Okay.
Everyone that's organized.
Yeah.
Did I say Keystone? Keystone's on that list if I didn't say it. There it is organized for this, but really it's going to affect others also. And so we're getting together for a press conference tomorrow to try and get this information out, that if something isn't done, right, I don't know if we can undo what's already been done with, the premium access plans, but the Medicaid rate needs to rise.
Right.
They need to raise that rate.
Right.
And because if nothing is done, it's not sustainable. The information that I've gathered from these other treatment programs that have been providing treatment for the Medicaid population is that their average operating cost per bed is $275 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And Medicaid's reimbursing $162.
Right.
How's that work?
It doesn't.
I don't know how the state of New Hampshire thinks that this whole thing isn't just going to collapse.
It's going to. It's going to. And there's so many layers to this, and I want to say this first. Right when you let off, you talked about the fact that they touted this Medicaid expansion. 50,000 more people are going to be covered, right? And you can put that out as a little tagline.
50.
50.
50, yeah, that's
Right,
what it was.
right. How many more people are going to get coverage and how great this is for everyone. And like you said, then you start pulling back a little bit and go under the hood on this thing and look at what this is going to do to this realm of care within the state of New Hampshire, which is so underserved already. A product, to me, again, of the stigma surrounding this disease still, that we could even think that any other medical condition would be treated this way, that any other medical condition would have this kind of parameter put on it, that you would be expected to provide a service like you talked about, 24/7 nursing. I mean,
Do you know what I just thought of? Do you remember when Ebola
yeah,
came out?
Yeah.
There's like 5 people in the whole country, and they issued like
Oh.
millions and millions of
oh,
dollars.
unbelievable, yeah, yeah. Everybody's got Ebola
There's
protection,
5
of
people,
course.
yeah,
Right.
5 people that are sick, and we get
Yeah.
hundreds of millions in funding overnight for it.
Right, right, and
Yeah.
here we are pinching pennies to try and provide a service that's taken out more people than the whole Vietnam War in the last year.
The
It's
leading
crazy.
leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50, addiction, and this is what we're doing.
Unbelievable.
And not only that, but all the rhetoric from all the politicians, bipartisan, both sides of the aisle, oh, we're going to beat the opioid epidemic and we're going to do all this, but behind closed doors, we're going to gut funding one more time. We already have the alcohol fund, which isn't fully funded,
Right.
better than what it was, but they're still robbing our money for prevention, treatment, and recovery supports through that and spending it on God knows what, probably roads and Route 93
Of course.
being reconstructed like 15 times.
Right, we need another lane.
And all that, and now they're going to gut it out of treatment itself.
Yeah.
And it's just unbelievable, and we need a call to action, because if they don't raise those rates, I feel like everyone's sitting back going, oh, it's too big to fail. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
When you have to look at historically, like in the 90s with managed care.
Mm-hmm.
New Hampshire used to, prior to all of this, prior to, the 2000s and the growth of a treatment system and an ecosystem in New Hampshire, and now we have a lot of providers and a lot of care. There was kind of the dark ages where there was almost nothing. Like when I started Granite House in 2008, there was just a handful of facilities in the whole state.
Right.
Granite House was the first sober living. But if you look back to the early 90s and the 80s, New Hampshire used to be like the destination spot to come to treatment.
Right.
You had Spofford Hall.
What was that? Beach
Hill.
Yeah.
You had these amazing facilities. And now if you travel the country, you'll meet a lot of old timers with 30 years of sobriety. And I got sober at
Spofford
Spofford
Hall. Yeah.
I know. And can I tell you how annoying it is that my last name is Spofford?
Oh my
and
God,
working in
dude,
treatment.
so
Everywhere I go,
funny.
they're like, did you know are you related to Spofford Hall? I'm like, yeah, I was fucking born there. Like, you know what I mean? No, I'm not. For the record, no, I'm not. I had nothing to do with it.
That's funny.
You know, and those places collapsed.
Right.
The buildings are dilapidated and have since been demoed, and they don't exist anymore.
No.
And the treatment structure just done. And
Right.
it was over and done with. Like, this is a real and immediate threat.
It is.
This isn't something that'll happen in 2022 and that we have time on and blah, 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 blah. No, the funding is out of this January 1st.
Right.
We have 6 months.
Right.
And
right.
then a lot of these facilities are going to be
Already there's a
hurting bad.
like people want to talk about there's no access to treatment, there's no beds available. Let me tell you why there are no beds available. There are no beds available because it's $162.60 a day to treat someone, and no one's willing to provide care for that price.
Yeah.
You cannot do it.
You know, and let's talk about that. So let's talk about Medicaid expansion and just information that I've been saying this for years. Literally years. And it's so funny that that people now, like now I'm going to a press conference and this is getting talked
Right,
about. So
right.
Medicaid expansion and the advocacy, recovery and treatment advocacy scene supporting that. I want to shed some light on that. This is like a very simple second or third grade math problem. It's like Johnny had 5 apples. Johnny gave Jeff 3 apples. Jeff gave Johnny 2 apples back. How many apples does Johnny have? There are, I believe, 312 beds in the state that take Medicaid that have been on a waiting list for longer than I've been sober.
Right.
They've never not been on a waiting list. They've always been on a waiting list. This is simple supply and demand. So by authorizing Medicaid expansion, that's wonderful, but it doesn't do anything for people getting better from addiction.
That's it.
Because this thing, you know, if you have 312 beds and they turn over every 30 days and they constantly have a waiting list, and last year and the year before and the year before and the year before, they all treated X amount of people and they're always full, well, by adding more people that are eligible for those beds, no one actually is going to receive more
Doesn't do
treatment.
anything to the treatment. No.
It doesn't, more people aren't going to get better. What we need is more beds and people that have access to that treatment. Like there's 2 parts to this problem. And so what I've been saying forever is what it feels like is that we need to do what in fact we're rallying tomorrow to try and advocate for, which is raise the Medicaid reimbursement rate to something that is sustainable.
Right.
Right? It has to at least cover operations costs.
Right.
To make sense.
Don't even make it. I mean, if y'all can't make it to a point where somebody can earn a living providing the care, at least make it so they can break even
Keep
providing
the lights
care.
on.
Jeez.
Well, and you look at healthcare as opposed to any other industry, and in America, healthcare is an industry. That's, you can have an opinion about it. So do I. Whatever. That's just the way it is. So we're talking reality and facts here, not emotions. There's no other industry or business that sustains with being paid. It's like General Motors. It's like the United States government turning around saying, okay, we're now, obligated to provide cars to citizens of the country.
Right.
Because really what they're saying is we're obligated to provide health care to citizens of New Hampshire or America or whatever it is. All right, that car costs you $20,000. We're going to give you 12. That's it. We're going to give you 12. That's what we think it's worth. We're going to give you 12 and have a nice day. What's General Motors going to do?
I mean, come on.
They're going to either go, no,
Right.
that doesn't work for us. or they're going to turn around and comply and go out of business.
Right.
It just does. The fact is, it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And I want to pull this back too, and I attached the word stigma to this before, and I want to say this again, is that if you were to look at, the reason for this is they don't want to give out dollars to treatment because honestly they don't care about us, is the bottom line. But here's the thing about it, is when you look at the ancillary costs to the medical system, on the other side of not appropriately treating this disease with some semblance of feasible dollars up front, the amount of cost. I just came from a place doing a lunch. They have someone in the hospital right now with endocarditis who's going to be inpatient in that hospital for 4 weeks to try to treat this endocarditis so they can go back out, potentially never get treatment for their addiction. But it's all based around their disease that they're going to end up spending, I don't know what, probably 200 grand for those 4 weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to take a comment from our Facebook live stream right now from Rosemarie, and I'll read it out loud for the listeners of the podcast. She said, not to mention the financial stress on the entire judicial system, police, all the way up to the prison. Somehow I don't understand how it makes good sense in any form to be reactive instead of proactive.
That's exactly.
And then another comment saying, you're exactly correct. And 100%, Rosemary, you're absolutely correct. I've been saying this forever. Again, there's no logic, there's no common sense here, because the idea around fiscal conservatism, right, people trying to hedge the bet on the money that they're spending on addiction, is that they're going to gut it out of the treatment program. So what they don't understand is that they're going to pay it everywhere else.
That's it.
It costs us between $48,000 and $52,000 a year to incarcerate people. It's a whole lot cheaper to treat them. Not to mention the burden on law enforcement, our healthcare system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The loss in the workforce and all that. And so the taxpayer, one way or the other, the cold hard truth and fact around this is the taxpayer is going to foot the bill. That's going to happen. It's just, as taxpayers, how do we want to foot the bill? Do we want to provide access to treatment and get people better? Because you know what people in recovery are? Do you know? They're taxpayers. They're taxpayers. I'll talk about my own experience. I, at one time, was a detriment to society. I went to jail. I cost money there. I cost money dealing with the police and a whole lot of other places. And now in recovery, I'm a business owner. I employ a lot of other people. I pay taxes. I'm a real estate owner. I pay taxes there. And I'm contributing to the ecosystem in New Hampshire, right? Putting money back into the system. So you're 100% correct that we should be proactive in front of this and treating people and getting them help and getting them into recovery and back on their feet so they can join the workforce and pay their taxes. And just from a political standpoint, right, from an economic standpoint rather, it makes sense there too.
Yeah.
Boom.
And I just think too, like, I have a fear, and I just feel like every year we're having this talk about this rate and all that. Thank God we're at a place now where they're actually going to rally, and there's action being taken around it. It's going to require something like what we talked about there, where everyone's going to have to just say we're not doing it anymore, and then they're going to go, oh my God, now what? Right? Yeah, there's only 312 beds, but those 312 beds are pretty vital, man. And if those were to go away, then what are you going to do in New Hampshire?
That's right.
Then what are you going to do? And I hope it doesn't come to that, but because if it does, it's going to be a real eye-opener for them.
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy.
Sorry, just catching up on some of the comments here on Facebook. Guys, feel free to fire off any questions or comments. We're happy to answer questions and discuss whatever you want to bring up. Katina, the more drugs the crazier they're going to get. The more we taxpayers spend. Mental health is on a rise because of drugs and alcohol people are consuming. Yeah, things are getting worse out there. This is not the time to back off of the resources to fight this fight with. It's not like we've won this battle or even made a marginal dent in it.
No.
Things are getting a lot worse. And I think this year, looking at the current numbers, and I don't know this for fact, but I know it's within the ballpark, that overdose death has finally kind of plateaued a little bit. it's still a horrific rate and way too many people dying. We don't
Right.
want anybody dying, but this enormous. And the funny thing is that doesn't, overdoses are actually up. And that's indicative of Narcan, the reversal drug, being widely spread. But you know, if the New Hampshire, if the state doesn't do something about this, what's that look like? How's that going to play out? What's going to happen? You know, I'll tell you that I was on a conference call with all these providers this morning, and they're all formulating exit strategies and downsize strategies to be able to make sense of what they're doing. That some of the programs are talking about cutting their beds in half. Another program was talking about their outpatient programming. They would be forced to cut it in half, and even that didn't really make sense, so they'd have to shut it down. And the importance on that is a lot of people end up in intensive outpatient and outpatient treatment while they're waiting for inpatient treatment beds on a waiting list. And so the infrastructure of this whole thing starts to crumble, and resources start to get dried up. But how's that play out on the street? What's that? What happens with real results of in 2019? Waiting lists are gonna. I mean, they're terrible now. I think they're still 4 to 8 weeks for these beds. So the waiting lists get longer. People die while they're waiting to get help. You know, and it's gonna be a catastrophe. It really is.
No question, no question. Because even that 4 to 8 week wait for somebody they've still got hope that potentially there's a space for them and there's a place for them to go get well, and that gives them something to hold on to. You remove that, man. You remove the option for people to even have that opportunity. Forget it.
Yeah.
Forget it.
So tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. at the State House. We're looking for as many people to come out and show support that we can get. So if you're watching this, please show up if you can. Spread the word. Go on to my page. If you're on the Facebook Live, or if you're listening to this, because this podcast will come out today on Monday, go on to my page, and I have a post on there with all the information and announcing the press release tomorrow. Would please appreciate if you go and share that on your own page and with your friends and anyone else that might find it of interest. And we'll see what happens. You know, I think the follow-up to this is the commissioner has the ability to set a new rate for Medicaid reimbursement on July 1st.
Okay.
And so that's what all the noise is about. And so I think, you know, we'll make as much noise as we can and try and get the reality out there. I think one of the biggest problems is that the New Hampshire people aren't aware.
That's the deal.
You know, and that's the biggest thing. That's why we're doing the show right now. That's why we're out on Facebook. That's why we're doing the press release tomorrow, is people aren't aware. You know, in recent elections, addiction and treatment and recovery was the number one concern of voters. The number one, you know. Too many people are affected. And I think, you know, if our government officials, if the information of what they're doing and how this is playing out made it into the voters' hands, that, you know, those are things that get remembered come election season. You know,
question.
like we need to fight this epidemic. We need to fight addiction, and there's two wars going on. You know what I mean? There's looking for solutions to hedge the problem back and get in front of this thing, and there's also just triage. You're trying to keep people alive and get them better. And that's the piece of this that this is going to affect. It's going to affect the triage. It's going to affect the recovery. It's going to have a direct effect on how many people are going to die of addiction in 2019. Like it is like 1 + 1 = 2. Like what happens now and what happens with these rates are going to have a direct result on how much suffering and death happens in 2019. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm fucking sick of it. You know?
Truth. I got nothing on that. That's
Hit them with
truth.
the heat. Hit them with the heat.
For real. I guess I will say this too, if you guys are you watch this podcast, you walk away, you go, what do I take from this? When you have a conversation with somebody and they talk about access to treatment and things like that, reframe the argument, reframe what you say to them, let them know this is all about that reimbursement rate, and it's all about the fact that there is not adequate funding provided to get this care, okay? So be educated on that, know it. 162 a day, 312 beds. That's why there's a 4 to 6 week wait list, 4 to 8 week wait list. You know, get the knowledge out into people's hands so people are aware. Like we just talked about, not enough people know. Help them know, man. Help them know. And God, like Eric just dropped that fire on you, man. This has a direct impact on people's lives.
Yeah, and I just want to follow up with some clarity to make sure the message is real clear. Like, more people with Medicaid is great, but what we need is more access to treatment. And I believe that Medicaid expansion was reauthorized under the spirit of access to treatment, when in fact the tangible results will just be longer wait lists, because the problem is the lack of beds. And so the reimbursement rate has direct result of that. That's what needs to change. It needs to be sustainable. People can't come in and grow programs at a rate that operates at a loss. Like, that's why we haven't seen a big expansion in, in resources available, and a lot of the expansion that has happened isn't available to the Medicaid population.
Boom.
So that's what we need. So if you're passionate about treatment and recovery and people getting better, as far as we're concerned, we need to advocate to raise that rate and make it sustainable for treatment providers. I mean, in 2018, we shouldn't have a waiting list for access to treatment. Like, that shouldn't happen. Like, people are dying. It's a number one cause of loss of life on adults under 50. It's a number one cause of life for accidental death in New Hampshire and America now, surpassed car accidents a few years ago. And if this was anything else, anything, like we talked about Ebola, if this was cancer, if this was any other public health crisis, there would be no limit to how much funding went. What do you need, a couple $100 million to clean this up? Boom, done. People are scared. But it's not any other public health crisis. It's not any other disease. It's addiction, and it's about forgotten people, and people that, quite frankly, a lot of people just don't give a fuck about, unfortunately, and myself having been one of them. So we need to advocate for that, because it's just down plain outright wrong that with the amount of people dying that we historically to today to current have had the waiting list that we've had, and even despite having those problems, that now New Hampshire is gutting programs and making it worse unapologetically. And I love my state. I really do. I love New Hampshire. It's an amazing place to be, but this is some shit. This is this is sneaky, and just, quite frankly, it was wrong, and it is wrong, and we need to help these people. Barbara Buchanan says hello. Hello, Barbara. So, guys, we appreciate your attention. We appreciate you tuning in to the podcast today. Make sure you tune in on Dana Lemire. A quick comment from Facebook. The state has zero skin in the game, boys. They rely on federal dollars. Until legislators are held accountable and we vote, and make a line item on the budget, they will continue to push the burden on, he typed so much I could hit this little see more button, on different stakeholders, i.e. hospitals, businesses, etc. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man, but heard.
Yeah, truth, Dana. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate you, and always your educated outlook and opinion on this stuff, man. It's right there. So we're with you, man.
100%. Guys, we'll follow up on Friday with another episode. I'm sure we'll cover a different subject, but we'll make sure to follow up on what's going on. And keep an eye on my page tomorrow. There's a good chance I might pop off and bring Facebook Live with me tomorrow at this press conference, and bring some more attention to this. And before we go, Ari, hi Ari. One of the reasons why the overdose has declined a little bit is probably because of people are using methamphetamines more now. It's because it's equally as much of a problem around here. It's another symptom to their spiritual condition without dying. The treatment is so hard to treat meth withdrawal detox. No, absolutely. We have seen over the last couple of years a huge incline in methamphetamine addiction and abuse. I credit some of that. My personal belief around it is because fentanyl and heroin are so scary and killing so many people that a lot of people are leaning towards other drugs because of that. But agree, and I do think that probably has played out on the overdose rate as well. All right, we could do this all day long, but we got to go.
Amen.
We got real jobs to do. We actually do work around here every once in a while. Love you guys. Appreciate it.
Peace.
Peace. Facebook Live.
What up, world?
What up? Oh, man.
I can't wear those headphones like that. It feels uncomfortable.
No, you can't. Oh, whoop. Did you hear that buzz?
Yeah,
What was that? The headphones hitting the mic?
must have been.
Did I break anything?
No.
Just a feedback loop.
Feedback loop, 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 loop.
Look at it. It's doing it on the thing. Dane
D.
Lemire.
Lemire's in the house. What up, D. Lemire?
What you want to hear about, Dana? We're about to jump on this Real People, Real Recovery podcast. Oh, man.
He's off.
Nice, still on. I wonder if I can set this up.
Yeah.
I need those headphones. Tell us something. Here, hold that.
Yeah.
Headphone tripod. Hang on. I'm trying to get this thing fixed up here. Ooh,
Oh, there we go.
Hands free.
Mm-hmm.
Clever.
Living the dream.
Hold me. Oh, we got some more people clocking in.
Yeah, we sure do.
Andy Mosier,
Mosier's
Danny,
in the house.
Adam, what's up, bro? Long time. Ashley Wayne,
What up?
high school homies. Oh,
Jay?
no. Somebody doesn't sleep.
Oh my
Somebody
gracious.
doesn't sleep.
Tara's in the house. What are you doing? You should be working, girl.
Best looking cuddle guy. You guys are the, Andy, you and Adam are, well, the guy's big enough I could just nuzzle into. Adam, what's happening, man? It's good to see you. All right, so we're in the podcast studio, if you can't tell, and we're looking for some subjects, man. What stuff to talk about. We want to know what you guys want to hear about. If you guys listen to the podcast, if you don't listen to the podcast, you need to be listening to the podcast.
For real, though. And we're trying to figure out, do you guys want some positivity today, or do you want some more
Too real.
direct shots right across the bow of a little too realness? Because we can come either way with it. Just depends what people want on a Friday afternoon.
Hi, Deb. Oh, that's a good
Ooh,
one.
Yeah, it is, Jordan.
Marijuana legalization.
That's a
Like
good
that.
one. That's a good one. We could talk about that. With drug testing and such, yeah. Stephanie! Oh my God!
Oh.
Steph's in the house! Miss seeing your face. I'm going to tell you
I
what.
know, right?
Mm.
Tracy, settle down. Love eyes. Is there anything we could say that is convincing to make a decision? A decision around what? For people to find recovery? Get sober? What kind of decision?
Gluten-free or non? Keto, maybe?
Keto diet?
I was talking to somebody who's been doing keto yesterday.
Oh,
Hey!
sorry about
Earthquake!
that. Oh. Is that going to hold?
That's crazy. Folks, we're not sure if you realize what just happened there. We just felt an aftershock from the Guatemalan earthquake. A volcano eruption here in Salem, New Hampshire.
Oh, man.
Documented on Facebook Live.
A decision to someone to get help sober. You know, I guess we turn this into a little Q&A on this. You know, if anyone, feel free to fire off your questions. No, I don't think there's a lot of stuff, right stuff you can say and right stuff to do, but there's no magic formula. I mean, if there was, we certainly wouldn't be where we're at now, right?
Meredith Tarr
Joseph Anthony, what up?
in the building.
Meredith, shouldn't you be out placing some clients?
Watch out.
Patrick, what's up? Maura, hello?
Hello. And you know, Deb, also, it's one of those things where, like, one of the things we always talk about is the work required to get sober and live a life of recovery is such that, you know, you can give people information and hope they'll make a choice around it, but the work is too difficult to do without willingness to do it. So I think it's more about like how we walk our walks and show people the way, and then hopefully that motivates them to be willing to do the work around it.
Oh, sorry. Megan, great question. Thoughts on Vivitrol? I'll answer that. Hi, D from California. Hello back from New Hampshire.
Hey, hey.
Hold on, guys. Let me get situated real quick.
Let me put it against this, bro.
You gotta get a pop socket.
Get a what?
Pop socket.
We got Jonathan.
It turns into a
Jonathan's on
tripod.
Facebook Live. Hang on. Sorry, guys. One sec. Trying to get situated on getting this to hold itself up. I guess I'll just hold it. We'll be better prepared next time. So, thoughts on Vivitrol. I think Vivitrol can be... It's all love.
Mm-hmm.
It's all that GRC love. Hey, Beth. Bill! What's up, homie? So back to Vivitrol. I think it's a useful tool at times. It certainly, it's non-narcotic. It's not like Suboxone or methadone. It has no street value. You can't get high on it or whatever. And it can be a useful tool. So there's a lot of upside in that, right? It's an opiate blocker for anyone that doesn't know, meaning that, if you're on Vivitrol, if you're taking the shot, if you use opiates, you won't feel the effects of it. The downside is people thinking that it's a solution in itself. Thinking that what we see a lot, or what I see a lot, is with folks, getting on Vivitrol, and all of a sudden, no, I don't need to do that work. I'm getting the Vivitrol shot. I'm going to be on Vivitrol. So I guess the takeaway is lots of upside as far as, protection in the early stages of sobriety and recovery, if that's your route. But the downside is that Vivitrol in itself is not a program of recovery. It's not going to solve your problems. You still got to do the hard work.
Thank you,
Bill,
Kathy.
Kathy, thank you very much. We appreciate that. We appreciate your support. Bruce Bressack, what up, homie? Bill, GRC softball tournament. You do know I'm sitting with a former professional athlete, right? He's going to smoke you.
Oh
Show
my
him the
God,
gun.
Bill, it's so hot!
Oh, man.
Shoot.
All right. What else we get, guys? Fire away.
I saw one come in that asked
Yeah,
about...
let me roll up. What was it?
It was about kind of what the timeline looks like. People should hear about
Oh, detox.
and what to expect.
Detox and what to expect. Yeah, we can absolutely talk about that. I think... Katie, 100%.
That's it.
100%. Detox, identifying that there are several different detoxes, there's opiate detox, benzos, alcohol. Alcohol and benzos are very similar in the detox process and also incredibly important to be medically managed under that, because it can possibly cause some serious medical complications and actually kill you. You can lose your life from seizures and whatnot from detoxing from alcohol and benzos. Opiates, depending on what it is, a heroin detox is a lot easier than a methadone detox or even a Suboxone detox. But generally, it's all the same symptoms. You're going to feel like crap. You're going to sweat your ass off, nausea, goose flesh. I thought for myself, one of the worst parts of detoxing was insomnia.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I could get through the days feeling like crap, but at night,
Gets lonely and long in those nights, man.
yeah, man, just waiting for, starting off with being able to get 30 minutes of sleep a night from like 4 to 4:30 or something like that. But it's a temporary price for a life full of freedom. Certainly the work lies on the other side of detox. Beth, the restless legs. I used to punch the life out of my legs. I'd like WWE wrestle them, going nuts, That was the worst. Kicking around in the bed like a little squirming fish. No doubt. Terrible. The important thing about detox is it's temporary, If you can survive, Tim, Nighttime Ninja Turtle, what up? If you could survive, years of addiction and that pain, you can get through detox,
I think we still, though, another
something?
piece of that I want to talk about is the fact that, like, any of us who have been through it know this, but I think outside of our realm, people still have this idea that you remove drugs and alcohol, get over the physical withdrawal, you're better. Go back to life, figure it out, you're fine. And it's like, well, we all know that's not the reality at all. That, like, removing drugs and alcohol is simply the first step in engaging a process that, number one, is lifelong, but number two, early on requires incredibly difficult and diligent work. So, I think that goes into it too. People need to know that, they need to understand that just getting off drugs and alcohol doesn't change the game, because we see whole systems set up around that belief that don't work. Not saying any names, but states right next door potentially. So.
Peter Brown, what up? Long time.
Spencer
Mang, man. What? What's up, man? I hope you're well.
Definitely.
Holler at me sometime. I miss you, buddy. Guys, happy to answer any more questions. Really looking for some podcast subjects. We want to know what you guys want to hear about. Help us get creative and what to bring on this little digital audio show that we have here.
This will go from your idea to the podcast. So
There's the mic.
boom.
Corey, what's up, man?
Hit us with the heat and we'll give you credit on the podcast. Maybe.
Maybe. Make you real people, real recovery famous.
That's it.
Oh, man. What's up, Fred? How you doing? Hi, right back to you. Dun, 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 dun.
I'm doing this awkward lean in to try to, like, stay in the frame.
Oh, Mora with the recovery coaching.
Ooh, strong. Strong.
I think,
I love it. I'll talk first. I love it. How it's utilized is my thing right now. I think we set up an idea around getting a group of recovery coaches and, like, building this piece of the model without incorporating it into the model beforehand. So it's kind of like potentially an underutilized resource at this point that we need to do more with. And that's really where it's going to shake out with that stuff. But I love the idea. Again, more education, the better.
yeah, no doubt. D, thank you. That's so awesome. That's really cool. That's why we're here. We want to get it out to people like you.
Amen.
And that's what the whole deal's about. So that's really inspiring for us. Beth, do we go to meetings? I graduated those AA classes back in like 2009.
Yeah, for real. I got everything I needed from those.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, No, we do go to meetings. We have a recovery center right here at World Headquarters in Salem called Pritz Recovery Center. You see us frequent there often. My home group is Monday night, 7:30 to 8:30. It's a big book study. It's an amazing group.
A Vision for You.
A Vision for You group. And we have something going on almost every night. There's a big workshop going on tomorrow, 10 to 4. We'll both be there. And David Otero, what's up, big boy?
Chris, I got to say this right
Yeah,
now.
let me read
Chris's
it.
comment creates a lot of fear inside of me. Chris, I would really push to seek alternatives to that if you can with your doctor, man. I mean, we're not medical professionals here, but if you've had issues with benzodiazepines, I know you say you never abused them, but had to be taken off. They had to be taken like clockwork, or I would feel like crap. Yeah. I would try to seek other alternatives first, man. And if you want to talk privately, holler at either of us, and we're happy to do so, man, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Benzos are a dangerous drug, man. You know what I mean? I think, of course, even if you're taking them as prescribed, there's still a physical addiction there, right? So no wonder you have to take them like clockwork, because if you don't take them like clockwork, you're in fact going into withdrawal. Like, the directions on the side of the bottle for the prescription don't make you immune from physical addiction, and that applies for benzos,
Dude, that
opiates.
was really good right there.
Did you like that?
Wow.
Boom! What up? So you're really starting the withdrawal process when you're not taking those, but there are certainly a ton of other ways to manage anxiety and everything else that a benzo may be prescribed for, right? Like, I don't know about you, Jeff, but I used to have debilitating anxiety. I mean, my anxiety was through the roof. And, just through recovery practices and mindfulness and time, too, a lot, and work, a lot of that stuff's worked itself out. And I don't suffer from anxiety anymore.
Benzos were a
If
big
I
part of
do-
my story.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, by the end I was at not like dosages matter that much, but I was taking like 40 milligrams of Xanax a day when I went to treatment. So I shook for 2 months. I always remember sitting in groups in treatment, like literally trying to hold papers. Like I just couldn't even break free of the shake. So that anxiety took a long time to dissipate. But again, like Eric just said there, man, you build up life practices over time that, that's not an issue today, man. I go stand in front of a room full of 5,000 people and share my truth and honest, vulnerable self and feel totally fine with it. But, I credit all that to the work that's been done around my recovery and the program and all that, man. It's just what it all starts and ends with.
Brenna, so proud of you. That's awesome. And holler anytime with any questions. Derek, appreciate you, man. Appreciate your
Derek.
attention. Appreciate you listening. It's all we really want. We're not asking for anything. We're just trying to get the message out there. Chris, man, I'm afraid to take benzos because all I went
This is the
through
same guy
getting
we were
off.
talking
Yeah,
about,
I know. I know Chris. I know.
Oh, right on.
I know him in real life, not just podcast life. 100%, man. You know what I mean? I wouldn't get back on them. I mean, I think it's consumer choice, right? It's everyone's personal choice on what you want to do. But for me, for quality of life, not being on benzos and learning how to manage anxiety and doing the work to really remove a lot of the anxiety, so I'm not even managing something that exists, it just doesn't exist anymore, is a far better way to go.
It is.
Jay, thank you.
I can relate to that feeling for sure. I hope it gets better.
100%.
For real.
Yeah. Jennifer, welcome.
Hey.
Hey, any ideas for a podcast episode? If you guys aren't going to talk, I'm going to make you listen to me beatbox.
Oh my God.
Meredith, I also tell you to call your fucking sponsor.
For sure, brother.
No doubt, dude. No doubt. It's funny. All right, guys, we're going to run out of time here, and we got to get this episode out. Appreciate you guys checking in. Oh, Derek. How long have I been? I've been sober for 11 and a half years. I got sober December 7th of 2006.
Mine is February 8th of 2006.
There you go. Fred, old hippie, 6'4", Terror play hard. I'm not sure what you mean, Terror played hard, but you know, we got a whole team of people willing and able to help. If you want to reach out, man, you can go on graniterecoverycenters.com. The admissions phone number's right on there. They're literally in the room next door right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can call in, and we got Dave, John, Jesse, and Samantha all working right now that can be happy to help you with your daughter. D, same for you. Please call in Granite Recovery Centers. Call the admissions line. They'll hold your hand and help you from whatever stage of the process you're at. They're really amazing. They're in recovery themselves. They get it, and they just help people all day long. They're really, really good. Alex, respect, man. I love it. Cool, Megan. All right, guys, we're out of here. Check out the podcast. It'll go up later. Appreciate you guys.
Peace.
We're on. I'm going to print out a screenshot of our first text message ever. And I'm going to put it in a plaque, and I'm literally going to hang it on the wall. I think I said, what did I say? I said, if you write on this, who's that? Oh, Johnny. What's up, Johnny? I said, if you type and press send back, I will get the message you sent me. Oh, man. Let's see if we can get some people on here. We got 4 people watching so far. It's pretty good. What's up, guys? Here with Piers Kaniuka.
Hello.
I want to start.
I've never done this. I don't know what's going on.
He just got his first iPhone like a month ago, and I was just busting his peanuts about how I sent him a text message, and I think I was his first text, and then I was going to print off the screenshot and put it in a frame and hang it up. What's up, Kelly? And Lori, what's up? You end up doing a lot of this. Hi.
I get it.
Let's start a discussion. We want to talk. Let's get it going. Oh, hello. Had the opportunity to FaceTime with Piers a little bit here at World Headquarters in Salem. We're actually in the podcast room. He's going to go down and do his weekly free yoga class, and followed by his recovery workshop that he runs on Tuesday nights. What are the times there?
Yoga's 5 to 6, 6:15, and the workshop 6:30 to 7:30. All open to the public, so please come.
How much do you want to see those people come?
Way much.
A lot.
A lot. And we
lot.
got like 25 people coming to yoga, so it's really getting good.
So we got 10 people on here, 11. That's cool. So one of the things of interest that's been on my mind this week, and I made a post about it that got a lot of action, days ago, is kind of the onset of crystal meth
Yeah.
and how that's not being talked about. And if anyone that's watching right now has any comments on this, we'd love to hear what you're seeing out there. Because it's, besides seeing the arrest records of people getting picked up, for distribution and abuse, it's not being talked about. And, I went out with the social media crew and the camera guys last week out into Manchester. And I was just talking to people on the street and seeing what was going on out there. And, I met this girl. She's 24 years old. And she had a 14-month-old baby that the dad's parents were raising. The father passed away from an overdose. And she was on the methadone clinic, and she was abusing other drugs and living in a woodshed. And, just a beautiful soul. Just a really kind girl. I talked to her for about a half hour, and she was kind of giving me the lowdown. She's like, yeah, fentanyl's still around, and people, of course, are still using it, but it's really, becoming more and more and more crystal meth. And then she said something really interesting, though. She said, a lot of it is meth, but a lot of what's going on right now is actually bath salts being packaged and sold as meth in Manchester. And
That's
hey,
so,
Donna, thanks for tuning in.
out of hand.
Yeah. What do you? What's your prediction with crystal meth? Like we saw the opioid epidemic coming, right? Like
Yeah.
Early 2000s, OxyContin, heroin. Like we knew this thing was a wildfire.
Well, I don't know how to predict it, but what I do sometimes wonder, I was talking to somebody today, is sometimes this thing looks like it's an orchestra. You know what I mean? Like, so the conductor gets the string section playing, and then he gets the brass section playing. Because what we saw with the opioids was 96, you get OxyContin, and then it just rolls and rolls and rolls, and eventually you get this bad publicity about the pill mills and all that. But in 2006, you get this thing called the I told you about this, the Drug Addiction Treatment Act, federal act, and that made it legal for any doctor to prescribe narcotics to treat narcotics. This means not just the methadone clinics. So you see, you got 10 years of OxyContin, oxycodone, then suddenly you got massive Suboxone marketing, massive bupe, and then about 2010 or 11, the rate of the pill mills and all that, it starts going down a little bit, but meanwhile you start seeing this huge spike in heroin, and the stats on that are like ridiculous. So 189,000 identified heroin addicts in the United States in 2000, 2.5 million by 2014.
2000 to 2014?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, it goes up.
Multiples.
Yeah, those are White House statistics.
That's unbelievable.
So you see, so then it starts going
What's
up.
up, Jason?
Then you get the fentanyl shows up,
So
and now we're getting.
But here's what's interesting is like I don't think the administration, pharma, government, all the different entities that play in this space are really forecasting this onset of crystal meth. So I guess what I'm curious about is to see, John, I know, right, Jonathan? What I'm curious to see is, one, how do they respond? Because you can't treat a crystal meth epidemic with Suboxone. And so how's that play out? Right now, we have all this federal money and all this stuff, and it's about harm reduction and reducing overdose death and all
Right.
of that, which is all fine and dandy, whatever, won't go there. But when crystal meth is on the come up, in 3 to 5 years, when opiate addicts are like a dinosaur,
Right.
and the new age is crystal meth, how much response time? Like you see, like when the heroin epidemic was here for a long time before anybody caught up to it.
Oh, yeah.
Or does it go underground again and lose mainstream attention because the body count doesn't justify the attention?
I don't know.
You know?
I mean, it's so hard to predict. I do think the one thing that smells funny about this meth thing is, we have an Adderall epidemic that basically is hiding underneath the big cloud of the opioid epidemic.
Yeah,
So much like we had.
being eclipsed.
That's right, and much like we had OxyContin, then heroin, it looks parallel where you've got Addie's, now crystal meth.
Yeah. You've been in this industry, in recovery a very long time, and in the treatment industry a very long time. Piers didn't disappear, he just doesn't know how to use technology. What do you notice about recovery from meth addiction? Anything different?
Yeah, in some ways it looks more strenuous. So, they used to teach that you gave a hyperactive kid speed, it would slow him down. That's just bullshit. You give anybody speed, it does the same thing. And what does it do? It fries the adrenals, and then it makes the emotions shallower. So when people come into treatment, they're really out of touch with their emotions, and their adrenals are fried, so they got this kind of like a different kind of depression. It doesn't look like that black hole dope habit depression. It's this kind of like an apathy.
What's for the other people here, what is an adrenal?
We have adrenal glands that they control the production of adrenaline. So
Got it.
yeah, so when you do speed, it spikes your adrenaline. And then to come down, you produce too much cortisol. And so you start doing this roller coaster thing. The other thing about speed, and this is a big study, came out of Brown and Tufts, it makes the nucleus accumbens smaller. So you give somebody Adderall, you give laboratory animals Adderall, and the part of the brain that governs the production of dopamine, it actually shrinks. And a smaller nucleus accumbens in human beings correlates with low motivation. There's no giddy up. So that's what we see with so many of our younger clients. They've been on the speed for a long time.
Yeah.
And they don't got any drive. So they come to treatment and it's all like that. They're flat. It's harder to reach them initially. And a lot of them, I talk to them, a lot of them are scared that they're never going to have feelings again. They're never going to have a normal emotional life. And I think they can, but I think it's
Time and work.
time and work.
Time and work.
You almost, what do we got here?
Hang on, I gotta hit the see more button to read your comment here. Love to respond to it. Oh. Cancel. We don't know what we're doing. GMTC needs to venture closer to Boston area and share the knowledge of staff. Miss you, Piers. From Beth Sullivan Peters. Thumbs up. You know,
So scary. Oh yeah, it's scary.
we just want all the Boston people to come to Green Mountain. We don't want to bring Green Mountain to Boston. We love Massachusetts, but we don't want to go there. What does this say? You're doing amazing work, Eric. Timmy has told me the great Tim. Thank you, Michelle. And so, guys, feel free to pop some questions or, conversation ideas. We just kind of got rolling on this thing on crystal meth and recovery from it and just kind of what we're seeing. And I guess really just put it on record to, get it out there that like this thing is now shape-shifting. It's moving into a whole new area. And although it's not mass overdose death, Kyle, answer your question in one sec. Although it's not mass overdose death, it certainly is going to be a terrifying epidemic. I mean, the stuff that I've seen is people just in psychosis with auditory and hallucination, auditory and visual hallucinations, and just straight crazy. I watched kind of the statistics in Manchester, New Hampshire over the summer, and the violence seemed a lot worse. Kyle asked if Adderall does the same thing.
It does indeed. And I think a lot of these clients we see that have this sort of apathy is because they've been on the Addies for a long time. And, often I'll ask a room full of people, how many of you were on this stuff as kids? And especially if I've got a male group, I'll get 70% hands.
So Michelle asked how we feel about opening up safe dispensaries. So I'm taking that as like safe injection sites.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think I'm with you, Eric. I'm for harm reduction. What I'm not for is harm reduction being touted as treatment, because it's not. And I'm also not into the idea that harm reduction is the only game in town and all the resources should go to that.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think harm reduction and recovery/treatment are kissing cousins, but both two very different things. And I think they're black and white, and in recent times they've become gray. Identifying as harm reduction is, trying to keep people alive. That's our goal. That's baseline, is if they're living, we're doing our jobs. Under the thesis that like dead people will never recover, right? They lose that opportunity when they die. And then on the other hand, recovery, those people that are the product of harm reduction are not in recovery. And that's kind of the shift that we're seeing. Recovery is really about abstinence and transformation. Donnie, awesome. Coming up in 8 months.
Sweet.
Green Mountain grad.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
There's a question about Vyvanse and how
Vyvanse?
that holds up to Adderall.
Well, I don't know how
in
it is
effect.
comparable, but it's a stimulant. It's a stimulant just like Provigil and Concerta and all that, so it's going to affect the same parts of the brain,
Yeah.
and it's also addictive.
Cool, Michelle. Appreciate that. What else, guys? Enjoying these questions. Sorry, our faces look so white. I promise we're not this pale in real life.
We are white, though.
We are white. Yeah, we're pretty white. We're just not this white.
Yeah, so I'm seeing, I think I'm seeing the effects of pharmaceutical stimulants. It's worse on our male population because the statistics show that they're more likely to get prescribed. I think the appeal is a little different with men and women. Guys, it seems to be all about sort of gaming in the basement and doing speed and playing for hours and hours and hours and hours. Women, it's more of a kind of weight reduction, hyper-productive thing.
Body image.
Body image, yeah. But make no mistake about it, it's done a real toll, and it's not getting any of the press it deserves because of the opioid epidemic. And now if crystal meth's coming to town, then, to me it looks like it's the same as the Addies. Now you can get a stronger drug and you can shoot it up and more bang for your buck, and here we go.
I think you just kind of touched on something inadvertently with the language of if crystal meth is coming to town. And I guess where I'm trying to change that conversation is like, it's here, it's been here.
Right.
Like, it's not coming to, this isn't like this is like currently happening. And I think as a society, we catch up to things so slow. You know what I mean? Like, we'll be talking in 2021, they'll be like, did you know crystal meth is here? And I'm like, I was saying this shit in the end of 2018.
That's right.
I got Facebook videos and internet people to prove it.
And for those of you out there, you are the guys that can tell us what's going on the street, and then we can get it out there, as opposed to waiting for the policy wonks and the politicians to declare an emergency when there's been one for a decade. That's something that's near and dear to Eric and I. We believe that recovered addicts should assume leadership roles in the world of recovery, and we believe the truth comes from the street. The truth does not come from the classroom, and the truth does not come from the legislators. It comes from you guys, and so we want to try to be your mouthpiece.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself. Guys, any other questions, comments? Open up a discussion, please fire it off. This has been great so far. Yeah, it's crazy watching the trends, man.
Yeah, it's like cocaine is like from another time, it seems like now.
You're old if you do cocaine.
Yeah, right, or you're running with some sort of edgy, different crowd.
It's crazy that I thought like what I was doing in my heyday, IV use of heroin and cocaine was like as bad as it could ever get. And now it's IV use of fentanyl and crystal meth. What do we got here? It's been a war on drugs since the early 80s. Like I was still money, wasted lives, ruined. I don't know why it doesn't let us read the rest of these comments. Probably because neither one of us are very good. We suck at technology. Combined, let's just talk about it. Combined.
We might.
Our technology skills combined are like half of a 9-year-old's. Like Gavin, who's 7.
Right,
is
we
way
should have
better
him
at
just come in here and do it.
Honestly. Yeah, man. War on drugs, that's a whole different conversation. How to form your own alternative to the traditional 12-step routes. Hang on. Bear with me as I try and... When you're writing these long comments, it's... I don't know how to do this. I can't finish reading your comment. I'm sorry.
What was it about?
An alternative to the traditional 12-step routes, and then we lost it at in my. So if you want to post it again after that, whatever you said, I'd love to answer it. But I think I know where you're going with this. I think both myself and Piers have had to walk a fine line between, what's acceptable in the organized 12-step world with traditions, and, outside issues and having an opinion and all this stuff. Alec, I keep trying and it keeps on bringing up this screen, and maybe it's because I have fat fingers, I don't know, but it's not working for me, so I'm sorry. But, and also stuff that we're passionate about, it's like, I always kind of wanted to be more than just, a guy that was in a church basement, and level of advocacy and mission and purpose and whatnot. But obviously you can't do that in that context. And so it really becomes about recovery, community, and tribe outside of your traditional 12-step structures. That becomes about advocacy and people with lived experience really driving this thing. Because that's one of our biggest beliefs and complaints, I guess, is that people with lived experience don't have a seat at the table. And in order to you can't have a seat at the table as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Those two don't jive together. So I 100% believe in being active outside of that platform. And I'm also of the school that anything along with, but nothing instead of. The 12-step world is still my bread and butter and my water. It keeps me going. And everything else is built on top and outside of that, if that makes sense. Lori, I probably do. I'm at corporate headquarters, and there's probably a lot of computers, but we suck at technology, and we don't know how to use it.
We promise it'll be better next time. This is our learning experience.
We don't know how to use any of them. This is our first time, so we'll step it up from here.
So I just want to dovetail on what Eric was saying. A couple things. One is, right now, the media and the discussion out there is acting like Eric and I don't exist, meaning that abstinence-based recovered opiate addicts, we don't exist. We're hearing abstinence kills. We're hearing,
Don't risk your life on abstinence.
Yeah, and if you don't advocate for Suboxone, you're a flat earther, all this sort of stuff. And we're not invited to the table. And the reason why we're not invited to the table is you can't make money off of an addict who's well. But the addict who's well is the one who knows about getting well. And we're not prepared to continue deferring to professionals just because they got PhDs and licensures to tell us that they know how to get well when they have no demonstrated track record getting people well that comes close to what some of the more prominent 12-steppers have achieved.
And, and I a lot of where I come from, and I know Piers agrees with me, and we're of the same, cut from the same cloth, but genetically and DNA-wise built a little different, where Piers has no problem locking himself in the library for days at a time, and I just want to go take it to the streets and start a revolution. And and so it's kind of like a can of gas hits a match. And I think that we've left these things in the hands of other people for too long. And that, the professionals, the politicians, the, other quote-unquote stakeholders that have had a lot of control around this issue haven't taken it where I would take it, in a lot of regards. Some, they've done some good work, but, the biggest thing is that they're not accessing recovered drug addicts and people in recovery. It's the biggest unlock of resources in order to combat the opioid epidemic or just addiction, the disease in general. And not only do we not get a seat at the table, but we're not even utilized.
No.
We're not even acknowledged that we exist.
Yeah.
And you have words going around in treatment and, with medication-assisted treatment, all this stuff. Alec, man, respect. About evidence-based treatment, evidence-based. If I hear evidence-based one more time, I'm going to fucking puke, because there's millions of people rolling around that have recovered from drug addiction and alcoholism They are the evidence.
But our very existence is denied. And so when we're talking about activism, you know, I'm the guy in the library, we're talking about informed activism. And what we mean by informed activism is there's a wealth of literature out there about the war on drugs, you know, Bruce Alexander's dislocation theory, Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, Robert Whitaker's work. There's a way that we need to really lay the context for this thing, because people don't become drug addicts in a vacuum. This crisis happened through, you know, very definable and discernible social forces, economic forces, and you can be sure of this, people were making money off of this bad thing.
David Sheridan.
What do you say?
I love this kid, David Sheridan. I really do. I don't know. He just started randomly posting like memes about Fast and the Furious.
Oh,
like,
really?
Like months ago
Oh,
on
yeah?
Facebook, and now we go back and forth. He said he lives his life a quarter of a mile at a time. Like Vin Diesel. Pia, what's up? How you doing down in Tennessee? I feel left out as ex-heroin using those hot pills. Pot versus antidepressants.
What is it?
I think she's saying smoking weed and not doing heroin anymore. If it's working, keep doing it. If it stops working, you know what to do. I don't know what to say. You know, I can really only come from a place of experience that as a heroin addict, I tried to smoke pot many, many times, and it just didn't work for me. Every time I'd end up shooting dope again. But then again, I do know people that used IV drugs, heroin and others, and that stopped and smoked pot.
Yeah, we're not denying that that happens.
That happens.
But, you know, for every story I hear like that, I got these 10 guys who, you know, had 8 months off of dope, and then they fired bong hits one day, and the next thing you know, they're on a run for 3 years.
Yeah.
I have 10 of those for every story I hear like that.
That's right.
And, of course, Eric and I both fall in that category, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our hat is off to you, if that makes sense. What's up, Jill? Welcome to the conversation. So, yeah, I think that really sums up kind of a lot of where we're coming from around, and you're right, it is informed activism. And it's a large part of this that Piers plays is his studying and the time that he is willing to and has put in. And then, you know, I feel like my position is, you know, as partner in crime here is I'm very motivated to put legs to it. I'm probably not going to spend my evening in the library. Alec, yeah, for sure. Message my page and we'll link up. Absolutely. But, you know, I'm motivated to put legs to it and action and actually take it to the street. Because inevitably the baseline, and it's funny that sometimes we're deemed as controversial, or there are people that take exception to the things that we say. But I just want to get it on record to be real clear that we really all just want one thing, and it's hard to be upset about it. We want to see people, I don't know if I lost that or not, someone's calling me. What I said was we want to see people get better and recover at scale by the masses, right? And We've had our lives touched with our personal addictions, but at this stage of the game, it goes so much further than our personal story. We've seen and worked with thousands of people. We've seen, I couldn't tell you how many people get better, and I've seen so many people not get better. I've seen so many people lose their lives. I knew way too many children that had grown up without a mom, without a dad, or without both as a result of this thing. And it just comes down to wanting to see people recover.
That's right.
You know?
And it's not like we don't know how to get people better. It's just the scale of the problem is increasing exponentially. And I've been at this for almost 25 years, and I can say with total sincerity, it's gotten worse every year. And we have no reason to believe that the magnitude of the problem is going to contract. So we feel like we have to up our game, and that means taking it to the streets, taking it to the halls of power, speaking truth to power, having an informed recovery, not just hiding out in a basement somewhere.
Alec, man, respect. I love that you're in the trenches, man. We're in the trenches too. And that's how this thing grows. is growing by numbers. More and more people. It's, I really see people getting into recovery, and a director of utilization review just walked by like we're two crazy people looking through the glass at us. Like, what do these guys do talking at a phone? What was I just saying? Oh,
Taking it to the streets.
how this thing grows. Like, what do we want? What's the goal here? Oh, the different types of people in recovery, assuming that you're of the same breed of recovery, it's abstinence, and you're making changes for the better, maybe it's step work or spirituality of some sorts, right? Some sort of spiritual solution to an internal problem. There's a lot of people that just fall off there. There's a lot of people that I got better, and maybe I'll sponsor a couple guys or volunteer or give back a little bit, but generally the spirit is like, I'm good. You know what I mean? And that's respect to those people. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool. I don't know why me and this guy here, like, our hearts have been touched where I'm just at such unrest about it. I just cannot rest. Like, I'm sober, and I've had some parts, small or big, in varying scales, in, at this point, thousands of people's lives that have found recovery themselves. But it's still not satisfying. It's like there's so much more to do. And so for people that can feel that, I think it's a smaller percentage of people getting sober and getting into recovery that are touched by that bug. But like, those are the people that really need to get down with that informed, that information, what do you call it?
Informed activism.
Informed activism, and start to be creative and start to connect.
Yeah, and we would love to meet you, and we would love to use our resources to bring us all together. And Eric's invitation, I didn't mean to interrupt him, but it's not just for people in recovery. I mean, if you're law enforcement, if you're somebody's mom, somebody's kid, if you're an academic, you're a school teacher, you're retired and you want to do something with your time, come find us. You do not need to be in recovery. But if you want to learn what we've learned about, this big mess and the hustle involved and how it all happened, we're here to share that with you.
Absolutely. We got to wrap it up because Piers has to be downstairs to start his yoga class in 15 minutes. But we appreciate all of you tuning in, appreciate your attention. And we did pretty good, man. We had 25, 30 people or something like that.
We'll get our technology thing down.
And yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back soon with better technology. Peace.